Across the galaxy, the Force binds all things, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy. But what happens when something arrives with its own kind of connection, one that has nothing to do with midi-chlorians or the ancient ways of the Jedi? What happens when a hero from beyond the stars finds himself in a galaxy where hope has been systematically extinguished, where tyranny reigns supreme, and where one person in a mask might just be exactly what the darkness fears most? Peter Parker wasn't supposed to be here. One moment, he'd been swinging through Manhattan, racing towards some interdimensional anomaly that Doctor Strange had warned the Avengers about, something about collapsing realities and tears in the fabric of space-time. The next moment, the sky had ripped open like someone tearing paper, colors that had no names bleeding through the gap, and Peter felt himself yanked forward by an invisible hand. He'd tried to web-line to something, anything, but there was nothing but void and screaming light. Then impact. He crashed through what felt like a metal roof, tumbled through sparking machinery, bounced off a Durasteel beam he didn't know was Durasteel, and finally stuck to a wall 3 stories up in what appeared to be some kind of industrial facility. His entire body ached, not seriously injured, thank God for his healing factor, but definitely bruised. Peter clung to the wall, breathing hard, his spider sense buzzing in a weird, unfocused way that made his skull itch. "Okay," he muttered to himself, looking around. Not Manhattan. Definitely not Manhattan. The facility was massive catwalks crisscrossing overhead, machinery that looked simultaneously advanced and brutally industrial. And everywhere, people in matching grey uniforms moving with mechanical precision. The architecture was all harsh angles and imperial efficiency, though Peter didn't know the word imperial yet. What he did know was that this place felt wrong, oppressive, like someone had taken a factory and sucked all the humanity out of it. And then he heard the march of boots. Synchronized. Military. Peter's spider sense flared that weird, muffled warning that felt like trying to hear underwater, and he pressed himself flatter against the wall. Around the corner came 6 figures in white armor, carrying weapons that definitely weren't any gun Peter had ever seen. They moved in formation, professional, scanning the area where he'd crashed through the roof. "Damage to Section 7, one of them said, voice filtered through a helmet. "Could be rebel sabotage, or another malfunction," another replied. "This facility's equipment is outdated. Scan for life signs." One of them pulled out a device, and Peter felt his heart rate spike. He started crawling sideways along the wall, moving toward the shadows of an overhead pipe system. His spider sense was going crazy now, but in that weird, muted way, like it was trying to warn him about everything and nothing at the same time. The sensation was disorienting. Back home, his spider sense was precise, reliable. Here, it felt like static on a radio. "I've got something," the trooper with the scanner said. "Unidentified biosignature, north wall, 20 meters up." All 6 weapons snapped toward Peter's position. "Well," Peter said, "that's not good." The first blast of energy, bright red, superheated, screamed past his head, and Peter's instincts took over. He leaped, twisting in mid-air as more bolts of energy filled the space he'd occupied a microsecond before. These weren't bullets. They were laser beams or something close to it, and they hit the wall behind him with sizzling impacts that left scorch marks. Peter fired a web line at the ceiling, swinging wide as the stormtroopers, though he didn't know that's what they were called, tracked his movement. Their aim was surprisingly good for faceless goons, but Peter had dodged everything from Vulture's wing blades to Electro's lightning. Even with his spider sense feeling fuzzy, his natural reflexes were more than enough. He landed behind a stack of cargo containers, breathing hard. "Okay, laser guns. Cool. Totally normal. This is fine. Target is extremely mobile," one of the troopers reported into a comm device. "Requesting backup." "Great," Peter whispered. "More laser friends." He peeked around the container and immediately ducked back as 3 more energy bolts slammed into the metal, leaving molten scars. His mind raced. He was clearly not in Kansas anymore, or New York, or anywhere on Earth. The architecture, the weapons, the uniforms, Even the smell of this place, ozone and industrial lubricant, was alien. But wherever he was, these guys were definitely the bad guys. You didn't wear matching faceless armor and shoot at someone for asking questions if you were the good guys. Peter's spider sense suddenly screamed, and he launched himself straight up just as something heavy crashed through the cargo containers where he'd been hiding. An explosion of force and metal, and Peter caught a glimpse of a figure in black armor, wielding a glowing red sword. No, not a sword, a blade of pure energy, humming with lethal promise. The Inquisitor had arrived. The figure was humanoid, clad in dark plates of armor with a strange, almost ceremonial design. The energy blade lightsaber, though Peter didn't know the term, cast flickering red light across a helmet with angular features and cold, expressionless lenses. But what hit Peter like a physical wave was the presence this person projected. It was like standing next to something predatory and ancient, something that enjoyed hunting. "What manner of creature are you?" the Inquisitor asked, voice deep and distorted through the helmet. "You are not force-sensitive, yet you move like a Jedi. Explain yourself before I take you apart to find the answer." Peter landed on a catwalk above, crouched and ready. "Look, I'm really lost here, and I don't want any trouble. I'm not a Jedi, I don't even know what that is, and I'm definitely not looking to fight someone with a laser sword." The Inquisitor tilted their head, and Peter could feel the scrutiny even through the helmet. "Your energy signature is wrong, alien. You do not belong in this galaxy." The lightsaber spun once, casual and threatening. "The Empire will be very interested in dissecting whatever you are." "Yeah, hard pass on the dissection," Peter said. The Inquisitor moved, and they moved fast. Force-enhanced speed, closing the distance in a blur. The lightsaber came up in a killing arc, and Peter's spider sense gave him just enough warning to backflip off the catwalk. The energy blade sliced through metal like it wasn't even there, and the catwalk collapsed in a shower of sparks. Peter fired 2 web lines mid-fall, catching himself and slingshotting back up toward the Inquisitor. He'd fought people with swords before, Taskmaster, Silver Samurai, and the key was not giving them the distance to use their reach. Peter came in fast, fist cocked back, and drove a punch into the Inquisitor's midsection with enough force to dent armor and send the figure flying backward 20 feet into a support column. The stormtroopers below opened fire, and Peter was already moving, swinging in wide arcs that made him nearly impossible to track. He webbed one trooper's blaster to his helmet, yanked another off his feet, and stuck him upside down to a ceiling beam, disarmed a third with a web yank, and kicked a fourth hard enough to send him crashing through a stack of equipment. Sorry, Peter called out. "But you guys shot first." The Inquisitor rose from the rubble, armor cracked but the figure clearly not incapacitated. The lightsaber ignited again, and this time the Inquisitor extended one hand. Peter's spider sense exploded with warning, and then he was flying backward, slammed by invisible force, crashing through a wall and into an adjacent chamber. Peter groaned, shaking his head. "Okay, they have telekinesis, because of course they do." He heard the Inquisitor's footsteps approaching, measured and confident. Through the hole in the wall, that red lightsaber glowed like a promise of death. Peter stood, wiping dust from his suit, and for the first time since arriving in this bizarre place, he felt the weight of how far from home he really was. But he'd faced down the Sinister Six, he'd fought alongside the Avengers, he'd saved New York more times than he could count. And if there was one thing Peter Parker knew how to do, it was stand up when everything seemed impossible. "All right," he said, settling into a fighting stance. "Let's see what Spider-Man can do in space. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you." The Inquisitor stepped through the broken wall, lightsaber raised, and the real test began. The Inquisitor circled slowly, lightsaber held in a guard position that spoke of countless kills and absolute confidence. Peter mirrored the movement, staying light on his feet, trying to ignore the way his spider sense kept giving him that weird, underwater feeling. It was working. He could feel danger, but the precision was off, like trying to catch something while wearing thick gloves. "You fight well for a creature without the Force," the Inquisitor observed, "but skill without the dark side is merely desperation given form." "I don't know what the dark side is," Peter said, watching for an opening, "but I'm getting major evil cult vibes from you, so I'm gonna go ahead and stay on team not that." The Inquisitor attacked without warning, closing the distance with Force-enhanced speed. The lightsaber came in low, then high, then thrust forward, a brutal combination meant to overwhelm. But Peter's reflexes were faster than anything the Inquisitor had encountered outside of a Jedi Master. He ducked the first strike, flipped over the second, and twisted his body at an angle that should have been anatomically impossible to avoid the third. Peter countered with a kick that carried 10 tons of force behind it. The Inquisitor barely managed to bring the lightsaber up to block, but the impact drove them backward, boots scraping across the floor. The shock of meeting that much raw physical strength was evident in the momentary pause. "What are you?" the Inquisitor hissed. "Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man," Peter quipped, firing a web line at the lightsaber hilt. The webbing connected, and Peter yanked. The lightsaber flew from the Inquisitor's grip, spinning through the air. Peter caught it by the hilt, immediately felt searing heat through his glove, and dropped it with a yelp. "Hot. Very hot," noted, but those 2 seconds of distraction cost him. The Inquisitor raised both hands, and Peter felt that invisible grip again, the Force seizing him mid-dodge and slamming him into the ceiling, then the floor, then the wall. Each impact drove the air from his lungs, cracked the surfaces behind him, and sent spikes of pain through his enhanced but still human body. The Inquisitor recalled the lightsaber to their hand with a gesture, the weapon flying back like it was on a string. "The Empire will learn much from your corpse." Peter's spider sense screamed, and he twisted just enough that the lightsaber thrust meant for his heart instead scored a burning line across his ribs. The pain was instant and excruciating, not a deep cut, but enough to sear through his suit and cauterize flesh. Peter gasped, fired a web line at a support beam, and yanked himself out of range. He landed on the far wall, clinging there horizontally, breathing hard. His blood was already clotting thanks to his healing factor, but the burn was unlike anything he'd felt before. Lightsabers didn't just cut, they destroyed at a molecular level. "Okay," Peter panted. "Definitely don't get hit by the laser sword again." Adding that to the list. Through the massive industrial chamber, more stormtroopers were arriving, at least a dozen. Weapons raised, forming a perimeter. Peter could hear mechanical sounds in the distance, something big and heavy moving his direction. His spider sense was going haywire now, warning him of threats from multiple directions, but the muted quality made it hard to prioritize. The Inquisitor pointed at him. "Stun setting. The Grand Inquisitor will want this specimen alive." The stormtroopers adjusted their weapons with practiced efficiency, and suddenly the air was filled with blue bolts instead of red. Stun bolts, Peter realized, non-lethal but presumably still very unpleasant. He pushed off the wall, swinging wide through the rafters as dozens of energy bolts tracked his movement. Even at stun setting, the Imperial aim was relentless. Peter webbed a cargo container and swung it into the path of the stormtroopers, scattering them. He landed among them, moving faster than their formation could adjust for. A quick combination: web one trooper's feet together, punch another hard enough to crumple armor, yank a third's blaster away, kick a fourth into his squadmates, and half the group was down in 6 seconds. "Man, you guys are like Hydra agents, but with worse aim," Peter said, dodging a stun bolt by inches. But the Inquisitor was already there, moving through the chaos with predatory focus. The lightsaber came down in an overhead chop, and Peter barely rolled aside. The blade buried itself in the durasteel floor, melting through a foot of metal before the Inquisitor wrenched it free. Peter fired webs at the Inquisitor's feet, gumming up their movement, then webbed their lightsaber arm and yanked hard. The Inquisitor stumbled but didn't fall, instead using the Force to shove Peter backward with concussive power. Peter hit a wall, and this time he felt ribs crack. Even his enhanced durability had limits. "Specimen is resilient," the Inquisitor noted dispassionately. Excellent. The Emperor will be pleased. The Emperor. Peter filed that away, whoever ran this show. They were clearly the big bad. He needed to get out of here, regroup, figure out where the hell he was and how to get home. Fighting an evil wizard with a laser sword and an army of faceless soldiers wasn't going to solve anything. Peter's spider sense suddenly shifted the muted warning, changing frequency, and he looked up just as a section of the ceiling exploded inward. Debris rained down, and through the smoke and dust, Peter saw figures descending on rappelling lines. They weren't wearing white armor. They wore mismatched gear, practical and worn, and they carried similar energy weapons but moved with guerrilla efficiency. Imperials. One of them shouted, a woman with short dark hair and a scar across her jaw. We've got maybe 3 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Make that 2, another said. A Twi'lek male with blue skin and the kind of lean, dangerous look Peter associated with experienced fighters. They're scrambling TIE fighters. The new arrivals opened fire on the stormtroopers, and suddenly the chamber was a war zone. The Imperials returned fire, and the Inquisitor turned their attention to these new targets with lethal intent. Peter saw the lightsaber sweep through one of the newcomers' cover positions, melting the metal like wax. Peter didn't think, he just moved. He swung across the chamber, grabbed the endangered fighter, a young man, couldn't be older than 20, and pulled him out of the lightsaber's path. They landed behind a massive generator unit, and the kid stared at Peter with wide eyes. What, who, how did you? No time, Peter said. Who are you people? Rebel Cell Phoenix, the kid gasped. We came to extract someone from Imperial custody. But you're not our contact. Yeah, I'm definitely not your contact, Peter said. I'm not anyone's contact. I'm just really lost and having a super bad day. The woman who'd spoken earlier slid into cover beside them, breathing hard. Up close, Peter could see the burn scars on her arms, the kind that came from fighting with energy weapons. Her eyes were hard but not cruel, the eyes of someone who'd seen too much but kept fighting anyway. You're the anomaly, she said, the one that crashed through the facility roof. Imperial channels have been going crazy about an unidentified hostile. I prefer friendly neighborhood confused person, Peter said. An explosion rocked the chamber as one of the rebels threw some kind of thermal detonator. The Inquisitor deflected it with the Force, sending it spiraling into a group of stormtroopers instead. The woman grabbed Peter's shoulder. Can you fight? That's kind of my whole thing, Peter said. Then help us get out of here, and we'll help you figure out where here is. She pulled a small cylindrical device from her belt. Name's Kira Voss, Phoenix Cell, and right now, we're your best shot at surviving the next 5 minutes. Peter's spider sense flared again, more threats incoming, something big and mechanical getting closer. Through the facility's main doors, he could hear the distinctive whine of engines and heavy weapons powering up. He looked at Kira Voss, at the ragtag group of fighters who'd just charged into an Imperial facility for one of their own, and made a decision. All right, he said, but I'm gonna need to know what I'm dealing with here. Later, Kira said. She pressed the detonator, and shaped charges they'd planted during the initial breach exploded simultaneously. The facility's eastern wall blew outward in a controlled demolition, revealing the cityscape beyond and Peter's first real look at where he'd landed. The city stretched for miles in every direction, all industrial blocks and oppressive architecture, and hovering above it like mechanical vultures were sleek, angular fighter craft with distinctive wing panels. Beyond that, Peter could see the curve of the planet against stars that were definitely not Earth's constellations. 2 moons hung in a purple-orange sky, and in the distance, a massive ship sat in orbit, a ship so large it looked like a city itself, all harsh triangles and weapon emplacements. Welcome to Lothal, Kira said, and welcome to the fight against the Galactic Empire. Peter stared at the alien sky, at the impossible technology, at the reality of his situation finally sinking in. He wasn't just in another country or another dimension. He was in another galaxy, and from the looks of things, this galaxy was in serious trouble. Behind them, the Inquisitor's voice cut through the chaos. None of you will escape. Peter turned, saw the lightsaber-wielding figure advancing through the smoke and debris, saw the remaining stormtroopers forming up for a final push, and felt his spider sense screaming warnings from a dozen directions at once. "So," Peter said to Kira, "you guys got a plan B?" Kira smiled grimly. "We improvise a lot. You good with that?" Peter fired web lines at the ceiling, preparing to swing. "Improvisation is basically my superpower." "Then let's move, Spider-Man." The sound of his name, his hero name in this alien place, gave Peter a strange sense of grounding. Whatever else had changed, whatever impossible situation he'd landed in, he was still Spider-Man. And Spider-Man didn't leave people to face monsters alone. The escape was chaos incarnate. Kira's team moved with practiced efficiency born from too many desperate extractions. But Peter quickly realized these people were running on borrowed time and sheer willpower. They had maybe 8 fighters, total humans, the blue-skinned Twi'lek, and something that looked like a walking tiger with dreadlocks that Peter tried very hard not to stare at, and they were vastly outgunned. Peter swung through the blown-out wall first, providing cover fire by webbing stormtrooper blasters and yanking them away mid-shot. The satisfying thwip-thwip of his web shooters was the only familiar sound in a symphony of alien weapons fire. He landed on the side of a building across the street, some kind of apartment complex with faded paint and barred windows, and looked back. The Inquisitor stood in the facility's ruined entrance, lightsaber held low, watching them escape with what Peter could only describe as calculated patience, like a predator that knew its prey couldn't run forever. "Come on," Kira shouted, sprinting toward an alley where a battered transport speeder waited. It looked like someone had welded 3 different vehicles together and prayed to whatever gods this galaxy had. The Twi'lek was already in the pilot's seat, engines whining to life. Peter pushed off the wall, flipped through the air, and landed beside the speeder just as Imperial reinforcements rounded the corner, more stormtroopers, but these ones had heavier armor and what looked like a portable cannon on a repulsor platform. His spider sense buzzed a warning half a second before the cannon fired. "Down!" Peter yelled, tackling 2 rebels into the speeder as a bolt of superheated plasma screamed over their heads and vaporized a section of wall behind them. "Go, Chopper, go!" Kira screamed. The speeder lurched forward with all the grace of a drunk elephant, and Peter webbed himself to the roof as they accelerated through Lothal's industrial district. Blaster fire chased them, scoring hits against the speeder's armor plating which held barely, and Peter returned fire with precision web shots that gummed up pursuing stormtroopers' visors and weapons. Above them, Peter heard a sound like screaming engines, and 2 of those angular fighter craft TIE fighters he'd learn later shrieked overhead, banking for attack runs. "We've got TIEs," someone shouted. "I can see that, thank you." The Twi'lek pilot Chopper apparently shot back, yanking the speeder into a hard turn that sent them careening down a side street barely wide enough for the vehicle. Green energy bolts stitched the pavement behind them, throwing up chunks of permacrete. Peter's spider sense was going absolutely berserk now, and he had to trust it despite the weird muted quality. He leaped from the speeder roof to a building wall, ran along it horizontally at full speed, then launched himself at one of the TIE fighters as it made another pass. "What is he doing?" Someone in the speeder yelled. "Something incredibly stupid or incredibly brilliant," Kira replied. Peter fired a web line at the TIE fighter's wing panel. The web caught, and Peter used his momentum to swing underneath the craft. For one terrifying moment he was flying through the air at speeds that would have killed a normal person, the wind tearing at his suit, the alien city blurring beneath him. Then he released, arced up and over the TIE fighter, and came down on its cockpit viewport. The pilot inside Peter could see the distinctive helmet through the glass, banked hard, trying to shake him. Peter held on with his wall-crawling ability, pressed his face to the viewport, and waved. "Hi, sorry about this." Then he punched the viewport. Once, twice the transparent material was tough. Tougher than any Earth glass, but on the 3rd hit, enhanced strength won out. The viewport shattered, alarms screamed, and the TIE fighter immediately went into an uncontrolled spin as atmosphere vented from the cockpit. Peter leaped clear, fired a web line at a passing building, and swung back toward the speeder as the TIE fighter corkscrewed into an abandoned warehouse and exploded in a fireball of Imperial engineering. He landed in the speeder's cargo bed, breathing hard. The entire rebel cell stared at him in absolute silence. "So," Peter said, "this is probably a good time to mention I have no idea where I am or what's happening." They drove for another 20 minutes through increasingly decrepit sections of the city, finally pulling into an underground garage that looked like it hadn't seen legitimate business in years. The speeder's engines died with a mechanical wheeze that sounded terminal, and Kira immediately posted sentries while the rest of the team began unloading equipment. Peter stood in the corner, trying to process everything, while his ribs ached and the lightsaber burn across his side throbbed despite his healing factor working overtime. He'd faced down an evil wizard with a laser sword, been shot at by an army in matching armor, fought in a city on an alien planet with 2 moons, and just taken down a starfighter with his bare hands, and he still had no idea how to get home. "All right," Kira said, walking over with a medical kit. "Let's talk. You're hurt." "I'm fine," Peter said automatically. "Healing factor. I'll be good in a few hours." Kira paused, the medkit halfway open. "Healing factor? Yeah. I heal faster than normal. Not like Wolverine level or anything, but faster." Peter saw her confused expression. "Sorry, that reference means nothing here. I recover from injuries at an accelerated rate? That's..." Kira shook her head. "That's not a thing. That's not a thing that exists. Unless you're some kind of Anzati or have experimental implants, and you clearly don't have implants because the Inquisitor would have sensed them." "Right," Peter said slowly. "So, speaking of things that don't make sense, what exactly was that guy? The one with the laser sword?" "Inquisitor," Kira said, the word heavy with old fear. "Dark side Force users. They hunt down survivors of Order 66 Jedi who escaped the Purge. They're second only to Darth Vader himself in terms of how much you don't want to meet them." Peter filed away the names Order 66, the Purge, Darth Vader for later, and the Force is. Kira stared at him. "You're serious? You really don't know what the Force is?" "I really don't." The Twi'lek pilot Chopper joined them, his blue skin gleaming with sweat. "Kira, we need to move him. The Imperials are going to lock down this sector, and if they find our safe house..." "I know," Kira said. She looked at Peter with an appraising expression. "You saved Ren's life back there. When the Inquisitor would have cut him in half, you pulled him clear. You didn't have to do that." "Of course I did," Peter said. That's what you do. You help people." Something in Kira's expression softened slightly. Not everyone believes that anymore. Not after 19 years of Imperial rule. She made a decision. "Chopper, get us to the secondary site. We'll debrief there." She turned back to Peter. "And you're going to tell us everything. Where you came from, how you can do what you do, and why the Empire is suddenly treating you like you're the most dangerous thing since the rebellion of Lothal." "Honestly," Peter said, "I don't think I'm dangerous to them. I'm just really confusing." "You took down a TIE fighter with your bare hands," Chopper said flatly. "You confused it to death? I mean, when you put it that way." The secondary safe house was a converted maintenance level beneath an old fuel processing plant. The walls were lined with stolen Imperial equipment, makeshift communications arrays, and what Peter recognized as weapons, though these weapons looked cobbled together from spare parts and desperation. The rebels gathered around a hollow projector, a device that created a 3-dimensional image in mid-air, which Peter absolutely did not geek out about, even though it was the coolest thing he'd ever seen, and Kira activated it. A blue-tinted map of the galaxy appeared, spinning slowly, with thousands of labeled systems. "This," Kira said, gesturing to the entire projection, "is the known galaxy. Millions of inhabited worlds, trillions of beings, all under the control of the Galactic Empire." She zoomed in on a section of the map. "This is Lothal, Outer Rim world. Used to be independent, thriving. Then the Empire came, strip-mined our resources, enslaved our people, and turned our planet into an industrial prison. Peter looked at the map, at the sheer scale of it. Each point of light was a star system, and there were so many they blurred together. You're fighting an empire that controls an entire galaxy. Not the entire galaxy, Chopper said. Yet, there are still free systems. The corporate sector maintains autonomy. The Hutts control their space. And the rebellion. He glanced at Kira. The rebellion grows stronger every day. The rebellion, Peter repeated. You're rebels. You're literally fighting the evil empire. When you say it like that, it sounds almost noble, Kira said with a bitter smile. The reality is we're terrorists to them. We blow up supply depots, sabotage imperial operations, and try to save who we can before the empire grinds them into dust. Peter thought about the Avengers, about S.H.I.E.L.D., about every fight he'd been in against Hydra or AIM or any of the other alphabet soup organizations that tried to take over the world. But this was something else entirely. This was a galaxy where the bad guys had won, where hope was a whispered rumor and heroes were hunted to extinction. The Force, Peter said. You mentioned it before. That's how the Inquisitor threw me around without touching me. Kira nodded. The Force it's an energy field created by all living things. It binds the galaxy together. Some people, very rare people, can sense it, manipulate it. The Jedi were an order of peacekeepers who used the Force for good, until the Empire hunted them all down and killed them. Her voice was flat, reciting facts that still hurt. The Inquisitors are what's left, dark side users who serve the Empire, who torture the Force into a weapon. Peter's mind raced. An energy field? That sounded like something Dr. Strange would talk about, or the quantum realm stuff Hank Pym was always going on about. But if this Force was everywhere, if it connected all living things, that's why my spider sense is fuzzy, he said aloud. Your what? My danger sense. I have this ability. It warns me when something dangerous is about to happen. Precognition, I guess. But ever since I got here, it's been weird, muted, like trying to hear through static. Peter looked at the holographic galaxy. If the Force is everywhere, connecting everything, maybe it's interfering with my own sense. Too much background noise. Kira and Chopper exchanged glances. You have precognition, Kira said slowly, but you're not Force sensitive. I don't think so. I can't move things with my mind or anything. I just know when danger's coming. Usually. Peter touched his side where the lightsaber had burned him, usually with better accuracy than I'm getting here. And the wall crawling? Chopper asked. The strength? The web? Things? Radioactive spider bite, Peter said. When they continued to stare, he added, long story. Weird science. Basically, I got powers from an accident, built these web shooters myself, and started helping people because that's what you do when you can help. With great power comes great responsibility and all that. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're not from this galaxy, are you? I'm not even from this dimension, Peter admitted. I was in New York, my city, trying to stop some kind of interdimensional thing, and then reality kind of broke. Next thing I know, I'm crash landing through your roof with an evil wizard trying to dissect me. Not a wizard, Chopper corrected. Inquisitor. Evil wizard with a laser sword, Peter amended. Despite everything, Kira laughed, short and sharp, but genuine. You're insane. I get that a lot, Peter said. Then, more seriously, look, I don't know how I got here, and I don't know how to get back, but I know what tyranny looks like. I've fought it before, and if I'm stuck here for a while. He looked at the ragtag group of freedom fighters, at their worn equipment and determined faces. I can help. That's what I do. The Empire will hunt you, Kira warned. The Inquisitor saw you. They'll want to capture you, study you, probably dissect you to figure out how you work. And they'll kill anyone who helps you. They were already hunting you, Peter pointed out. Fair enough. Kira deactivated the holoprojector. "Welcome to Phoenix Cell, Spider-Man. Try not to get us all killed." Outside, somewhere in the industrial night of Lothal, Peter could hear the distant scream of TIE fighter patrols. The Empire was looking for him. An Inquisitor wanted him captured. He was stranded in another galaxy with no way home and a spider sense that barely worked. Peter Parker had definitely had better days, but he'd also never walked away from a fight just because the odds were bad. And something told him this galaxy, this oppressed, suffering galaxy, needed Spider-Man now more than ever, even if they didn't know it yet. Peter spent the first 3 days in the Phoenix Cell safe house learning just how deep the Empire's control ran, and honestly, it made every villain he'd ever faced back home look like amateur hour. The Holonet, their version of the internet, was completely monitored. Every communication, every transaction, every movement through official channels was tracked, catalogued, and analyzed by Imperial intelligence. Facial recognition scanners at every checkpoint, mandatory identification cards embedded with tracking chips, curfews enforced by stormtrooper patrols that had authorization to shoot on sight. "It's not occupation," Kira explained while Peter watched surveillance footage of Imperial troops dragging families from their homes. "It's systematic oppression refined to an art form. The Empire doesn't just want to control you, they want you to forget you were ever free." Peter felt sick watching it. Back home, Hydra had tried to do something similar with Project Insight, but the Avengers had stopped it. Here, Project Insight had apparently won, spread across an entire galaxy, and had been running for nearly 2 decades. "How do you fight this?" Peter asked. "I mean, really fight it? They've got Star Destroyers, infinite soldiers, and literal space wizards on their side." "One mission at a time," Chopper said. He was cleaning a blaster rifle with practiced ease, his lekku the headtails that Peter tried very hard not to stare at twitching occasionally. "We can't take on the Empire head-to-head, but we can make them bleed resources. Every transport we destroy, every Imperial officer we expose, every person we save, it adds up. Death by 1,000 cuts," Peter said. "Exactly." But Peter's presence had complicated things. The Holonet was flooded with Imperial bulletins about the anomaly, Priority 1, capture orders, massive rewards, and warnings that he was extremely dangerous and likely force-sensitive. His fight with the Inquisitor had been recorded on multiple security feeds, and now every bounty hunter, Imperial agent, and opportunistic criminal in the sector was looking for a masked figure who could stick to walls. "You're famous," Kira said, pulling up another bulletin. The image was grainy but recognizable. Peter mid-swing, captured from a security camera. "They're calling you the Spider." "Very creative." "Could be worse," Peter said. "At least it's not Spider Boy or Arachnid Lad." "They're also offering 50,000 credits for information leading to your capture," Chopper added. That's more than most bounty hunters see in a year." Peter whistled. "I'm flattered and terrified." But the bigger problem was his spider sense, and it was getting worse, not better. Every time Peter tried to rely on it, the warning came too late, or not at all. During a simple reconnaissance mission just watching an Imperial checkpoint, his spider sense hadn't warned him about a patrol droid until it was 10 feet away. He'd had to scramble up a building and hide, but the close call had rattled him. Spider sense was his edge. It was the thing that kept him alive when fighting people stronger, faster, or better armed than him. Without it working properly, he was just a guy with sticky hands and above-average punching power. Well, way above average punching power. But still, "It's the Force," Kira said when Peter explained the problem. They were alone in a storage room that doubled as Phoenix Cell's armory. "It has to be. You said it yourself. Your danger sense is picking up the Force's presence everywhere, and it's overwhelming your ability to distinguish actual threats." "So, what do I do?" Peter asked, frustrated. "I can't just turn off the Force." "No," Kira agreed. "But maybe you can learn to filter it." She hesitated, then pulled something from her jacket, a small metallic cylinder, worn and scratched. "This was my father's." Peter recognized it immediately. "That's a lightsaber." "Was a lightsaber," Kira corrected. "The Kyber crystal is dead. Has been for 15 years, since the Inquisitors killed him. Her voice was carefully neutral, but Peter could hear the old pain underneath. He was a Jedi Knight, not a council member or a famous general. Just a protector. Someone who helped people. "I'm sorry," Peter said quietly. Kira turned the dead lightsaber over in her hands. He used to meditate, hours every day. He said the Force was like an ocean, vast, powerful, everywhere, and to use it, you had to learn to float in it without drowning. She looked at Peter. "Maybe your spider sense needs the same thing. You're trying to fight against the Force's presence. Maybe you need to learn to exist within it. Meditate," Peter said flatly. "I'm supposed to meditate. You have a better idea?" Peter didn't, actually. So for the next several days, in between helping Phoenix Cell with supply runs and avoiding Imperial patrols, Peter tried to meditate. He sat cross-legged in the corner of the safe house, closed his eyes, and tried to feel the Force like Kira described. It was possibly the most frustrating thing he'd ever attempted. His spider sense wasn't something he controlled, it just happened. Trying to consciously interact with it was like trying to manually control his own heartbeat. And the Force? Peter had no idea what he was supposed to be sensing. Was it the weird pressure he felt behind his eyes? The constant low-level buzzing in his skull? The way the air sometimes felt thick, like humidity but not? "This is stupid," Peter muttered after the 5th failed attempt. "I'm not a Jedi. I can't use the Force. This is just..." His spider sense pulsed. Not the usual warning, this was different. Clearer. Like someone had adjusted the frequency on a radio, and suddenly the static resolved into music. Peter's eyes snapped open. "Whoa. What?" Kira asked from across the room, where she was reviewing supply manifests. "I felt something," Peter said. "My spider sense, it changed for a second. Got clearer." "That's progress," Kira said. "Keep going." Peter closed his eyes again, trying to recapture that moment. The Force was everywhere, Kira had said. An ocean, and Peter's spider sense was trying to warn him about every single drop of water instead of just the dangerous currents. So don't fight it. Don't try to block it out. Just acknowledge it. Yes, the Force is there. Yes, it's everywhere. That's the baseline. That's normal. Now, what's different? What's actually dangerous? His spider sense pulsed again, and this time Peter felt it a distinction between the Force's ambient presence and actual threats. The constant background noise was still there, but he could sense layers, textures. Some parts of the Force felt calm, neutral. Other parts felt sharp, aggressive, predatory. The door to the safe house opened, and Peter's spider sense flared, but this time it was precise, not the muted underwater feeling. A clear, sharp warning of someone entering his space. Peter opened his eyes to see Ren, the young rebel he'd saved from the Inquisitor, carrying a crate of supplies. No threat, just someone walking through a door. "It's working," Peter said, amazed. "It's actually working." Over the next week, Peter practiced constantly. His spider sense was slowly adapting, learning to distinguish the Force's omnipresent energy from genuine danger. It wasn't perfect, he still got false positives, still missed things occasionally, but the improvement was dramatic. And he needed every edge he could get, because Phoenix Cell's missions were getting more dangerous. "This is a terrible idea," Peter said, looking at the holographic blueprint of an Imperial detention center. "It's a necessary idea," Kira corrected. "We have intelligence that they're holding a Mon Calamari engineer, someone who has information about a new Imperial weapons project. If we don't extract him now, he'll be transferred to an orbital facility where we'll never reach him." Peter studied the layout. 3 levels, heavy security, stormtrooper patrols every 5 minutes, and according to their intelligence, at least 1 Inquisitor on site. "Let me guess," Peter said. "We're going in anyway." "We're going in anyway," Kira confirmed. Chopper leaned forward. "With you, we might actually pull this off. Your ability to climb walls, move silently, and your precognition, even if it's not perfect, gives us options we've never had before. Peter looked at the assembled Phoenix Cell members, 8 people total, against an Imperial detention facility. The odds were absolutely terrible, which is exactly when Spider-Man did his best work. "All right," Peter said, "but we do this smart. No heroic charges, no last stands. We get in, we get your engineer, we get out. And if things go sideways, they always go sideways," Ren said with a grin that was maybe 80% courage and 20% terror. "Then we improvise," Peter finished. "That's my specialty." Kira pulled up a detailed schematic of the facility's ventilation system. "There's an intake shaft here wide enough for one person to crawl through. It leads directly to the detention level. Problem is, it's 60 feet straight up a smooth metal wall." Everyone looked at Peter. "Yeah. Okay," Peter said. "I can do that part." The plan came together quickly. Peter would infiltrate through the ventilation shaft, disable internal security from a terminal on the detention level, and open the main doors for the rest of Phoenix Cell to enter. They'd extract the engineer, Peter would cover their escape with his mobility and web shooters, and they'd be gone before Imperial reinforcements arrived. It was a good plan, which meant, Peter reflected as they approached the facility under cover of Lothal's perpetual industrial smog, that something would definitely go wrong. His spider sense had been quiet during the approach, just the ambient force presence he was learning to filter out. But as they reached the facility's perimeter, Peter felt it shift. That predatory texture he'd learned to recognize. Something dangerous was nearby. "We've got a problem," Peter whispered into the comm unit Chopper had given him. "My spider sense is going crazy. There's something here, something bad. Can you be more specific?" Kira asked. Peter concentrated, trying to parse the warning. Not immediate danger, nothing was about to attack them right now, but close, very close, and getting closer. "There's a Force user here," Peter said. "Not just on site, hunting, moving with purpose." "The Inquisitor," Chopper breathed. "They must have anticipated we'd try something." Peter's spider sense pulsed again, and this time he felt the direction northwest, moving in a patrol pattern around the facility's exterior. The same Inquisitor from before? Or a different one? Did it matter? "New plan," Peter said. "I go in alone. You guys wait for my signal. If the Inquisitor is patrolling outside, we don't want you anywhere near here when they make their rounds." "Absolutely not," Kira said. "We don't leave people behind." "You're not leaving me behind," Peter said. "You're letting me do what I do best, being really annoying to people who deserve it." He looked at the facility, at the ventilation shaft 60 feet up a sheer wall, and felt his spider sense pulse again. Danger, definitely danger, but also opportunity. "Trust me," Peter said. "I've got this." Before Kira could argue, Peter fired a web line at the facility wall and pulled himself into the darkness, scaling the structure with the ease of someone who'd spent years swinging through Manhattan. The ventilation shaft was exactly where the schematic said it would be, and Peter pried open the grate with enhanced strength. He paused at the entrance, his spider sense now thrumming with constant warnings. The Inquisitor was close. The facility was dangerous. This entire mission was balanced on a knife's edge, but somewhere inside that building was someone who needed help. And Peter Parker had never been good at walking away from people who needed help. "All right, Spidey," he whispered to himself. "Time to be a menace." He crawled into the ventilation shaft, and the darkness swallowed him whole. The ventilation system was cramped, dark, and smelled like 20 years of recycled air and industrial lubricant. Peter crawled through the shaft with practiced silence, his enhanced senses picking up every sound, the hum of machinery, the distant march of boots, the mechanical breathing of environmental systems keeping this prison operational. His spider sense pulsed rhythmically now, a steady warning that danger was everywhere in this place, but he'd learned to parse it, to distinguish between ambient threat and immediate danger. The Inquisitor was still outside, their predatory force presence circling like a shark. Inside the facility, Peter sensed stormtroopers, automated defenses, and something else, something that felt different from the Force users he'd encountered. Fear, desperation, pain. The prisoners. Peter followed the ventilation shaft down 3 levels, navigating by the schematic he'd memorized and his spider senses growing precision. When he reached the detention level, he could hear voices through the grate below him, Imperial officers discussing transfer schedules and prisoner processing. Mon Calamari has been resistant to interrogation, one voice said, clinical and detached. The Inquisitor suggested enhanced methods. The Grand Inquisitor wants him alive for questioning about the weapon schematics, another voice replied. But brain damage is acceptable, if necessary. Peter felt his jaw clench. These people talked about torture like it was a maintenance procedure. He'd fought plenty of villains back home, Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Kingpin, but even they had the decency to be villains. They knew they were bad guys. These Imperials thought they were just doing their jobs, which somehow made it worse. Peter positioned himself over the security terminal room, a small chamber adjacent to the main detention block, where a single officer monitored surveillance feeds. His spider sense confirmed. One person, not particularly alert, more focused on their datapad than the actual security screens. Peter carefully removed the ventilation grate, set it aside silently, and dropped down behind the officer. Before the man could turn around, Peter webbed his mouth shut, then his hands to the chair, then the chair to the desk. "Sorry," Peter whispered, "but you're working for space Nazis, so I don't feel that bad." The officer's eyes went wide with terror, but the webbing held. Peter turned to the security terminal, and his spider sense immediately screamed a warning, his reflection in the dark screen. Someone was behind him. Peter spun, but he was too slow. A figure in dark robes stood in the doorway, yellow eyes gleaming beneath a hood. Not the armored Inquisitor from before, this one was leaner, almost skeletal, with pale skin marked by ritual scars. "The anomaly," the figure said, voice like glass on stone. "How convenient that you delivered yourself to us." Peter's spider sense was screaming now, that predatory Force texture flooding his awareness. This wasn't just any Inquisitor, this one felt different. Older. More dangerous. "Look, I'm not looking for trouble," Peter said, backing toward the terminal. "Just here to pick up a friend and leave. No need for the whole lightsaber thing." The Inquisitor's hand moved, and Peter felt invisible pressure wrap around his throat. The Force choke lifted him off the ground, cutting off his air. Peter clawed at his neck reflexively, even though there was nothing physical to grab. "You will tell me what you are," the Inquisitor said, walking closer. "What manner of creature possesses such abilities without touching the Force? Are you a failed experiment, a genetic aberration, or something from beyond the known regions?" Peter couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. His vision started to gray at the edges, but his spider sense, now adapted, now precise, gave him exactly what he needed. The Inquisitor's focus was entirely on maintaining the Force choke. Their lightsaber was still clipped to their belt, and they were standing just close enough. Peter fired both web shooters. One web line caught the Inquisitor's outstretched hand, the other caught their face. The concentration broke, the Force choke released, and Peter dropped, gasping for air. The Inquisitor staggered backward, clawing at the webbing on their face. Peter didn't give them time to recover. He lunged forward, grabbed the Inquisitor's lightsaber from their belt, and hurled it across the room, where it clattered into a corner. "You want to know what I am?" Peter said, his voice rough from the choking. "I'm your worst nightmare. I'm a working-class kid from Queens who doesn't know when to quit." The Inquisitor snarled, the sound deeply unsettling coming from a human throat, and extended both hands. The Force slammed into Peter like a freight train, throwing him through the security terminal in an explosion of sparks and shattered equipment. Peter hit the wall hard enough to crack the durasteel. His healing factor was already working, but everything hurt. He pushed himself up, shaking off debris, and saw the Inquisitor advancing with murder in their yellow eyes. Alarms started blaring. Red emergency lights bathed everything in crimson. Apparently destroying the security terminal had triggered lockdown protocols. "Great," Peter muttered. Improvising. The Inquisitor called their lightsaber back to their hand with the Force. The weapon flew across the room like it was on a string and ignited it with that distinctive snap hiss. The blade was red, angry, casting flickering shadows. Peter's spider sense was giving him clear warnings now. Blade coming high, follow-up thrust, Force push incoming. He dodged the first strike, flipped over the second, and webbed a piece of debris to use as a shield against the third. The Force push shattered the debris, but Peter was already moving, running up the wall, across the ceiling, keeping mobile. "You cannot hide from the Force," the Inquisitor said, tracking his movement with eerie precision. "Not hiding," Peter called back. "Just making you work for it." He fired web lines at the ceiling panels, yanking them down to create obstacles. The Inquisitor cut through them effortlessly, but it bought Peter seconds. He webbed the Inquisitor's feet to the floor, the figure sliced through the webbing. He webbed their lightsaber arm, they burned through it. But Peter was learning. Lightsabers cut through his webs instantly, but the Force users needed concentration to use their telekinesis. If he kept them defensive, kept them reacting instead of acting, he could survive this. The detention block doors burst open, and stormtroopers flooded in, at least a dozen, blasters raised. Peter's spider sense painted their positions in his mind with perfect clarity. The adaptation was complete. He could feel danger now as precisely as he ever had on Earth. "Target acquired," one trooper shouted. "Open fire." The air filled with red blaster bolts. Peter moved, and it was like dancing. His body knew where every bolt would be before it arrived. He wall crawled at full speed, zigzagging across surfaces as energy fire chased him, and not a single shot connected. One of the stormtroopers got too close. Peter planted both feet in his chest, with enough force to send the trooper flying backward into 3 of his squadmates. Another tried to track Peter's movement. Peter webbed his blaster and yanked it away, then used it as a projectile to knock out 2 more troopers. The Inquisitor watched this display with growing fury. "You fight like a Jedi, but you are not one of them. What are you?" "I'm Spider-Man," Peter said, landing in a crouch. "And I'm really starting to get the hang of this Force thing." The Inquisitor roared, actual rage breaking through their cold composure, and unleashed a wave of Force energy that blew apart everything in the room that wasn't bolted down. Peter webbed himself to a support beam, holding on as the hurricane of power washed over him. When it cleared, the Inquisitor was breathing hard, yellow eyes blazing with fury and something else. Confusion, possibly even fear. "You should not be able to resist the dark side," the Inquisitor said. "No living being can withstand its full power without being touched by it." Peter realized something important. The Force worked on everyone in this galaxy. It connected them, influenced them, made them vulnerable to its manipulation. But Peter wasn't from this galaxy. His spider sense, his connection to whatever cosmic force had given him powers, was fundamentally different from the Force. Not stronger or weaker, just different, which meant he was partially immune to Force influence. "Yeah," Peter said. "I'm starting to figure that out. Must be super annoying for you guys." The Inquisitor's response was interrupted by an explosion from somewhere above them. The facility shook, dust raining from the ceiling, and Peter's comm crackled to life. "Spider," Kira's voice. "Urgent. We're coming in. The Inquisitor outside detected us. We had to make a breach." "Little busy down here," Peter shouted back, dodging another lightsaber strike. "Detention level, Section 4. We've got the engineer." Peter's mind raced. Phoenix Cell had the engineer. They needed an exit route. And Peter was currently trapped in a room with an increasingly angry Inquisitor and wounded but still functional stormtroopers. His spider sense pulsed warning from above. The other Inquisitor, the one who'd been patrolling outside, they were coming. Fast. Peter made a decision. He fired web lines at the ceiling, creating a massive web net that he poured every ounce of his remaining web fluid into. Then he grabbed the nearest piece of heavy equipment, a detention cell door that had been blown off its hinges, and hurled it at the Inquisitor with all his enhanced strength. The Inquisitor deflected it with the Force, but the moment of distraction was all Peter needed. He activated the webnet's adhesive at maximum strength, dropping it on the Inquisitor and half the remaining stormtroopers like a massive sticky blanket. "That should hold you for maybe 90 seconds, Peter called. He could already see the lightsaber starting to cut through the webbing. "So I'm gonna go now." He ran for the detention block exit, following his spider sense toward where he felt Kira's team, the familiar signatures of people who weren't trying to kill him. Behind him, he heard the Inquisitor screaming in rage and the sound of a lightsaber soaring through industrial-strength webbing. Peter burst into the main detention corridor and immediately had to duck as blaster fire filled the air. Phoenix Cell was pinned down behind improvised cover, taking fire from stormtroopers at both ends of the corridor. In the center of their group was a figure Peter had never seen before, salmon-colored skin, large eyes, and the distinctive head shape of the Mon Calamari species he'd seen in Kira's briefing materials. "Spider!" Chopper yelled. "We need an exit." Peter's spider sense mapped the entire corridor in his mind. Stormtroopers closing from both sides, structural weak points in the walls, air circulation patterns indicating ventilation shafts, and above, getting closer every second, that second predatory force presence. "Everyone get down," Peter shouted. He fired web lines at the ceiling panels directly above the stormtroopers at the east end of the corridor. Then he yanked with all his enhanced strength. The ceiling collapsed in a controlled cave-in, burying that squad and blocking the corridor. "West exit," Peter pointed. "Move now." Phoenix Cell ran, the Mon Calamari engineer stumbling between two rebels. Peter covered their retreat, webbing stormtroopers' weapons, tripping them, creating obstacles. His spider sense was singing now, precise, reliable, every warning perfectly timed. They burst through a blast door into an equipment bay. Peter immediately felt his spider sense scream a warning. The second Inquisitor dropped from above, lightsaber igniting before they even landed. This was the armored one from the initial encounter, and they looked pissed. "None of you leave here alive," the Inquisitor stated. Kira raised her blaster. Chopper aimed his rifle. The rest of Phoenix Cell formed up, but Peter could see it in their faces. They knew they couldn't win this fight. Inquisitors were living weapons, trained to kill Jedi. What chance did a ragtag rebel cell have? But they had something the Inquisitor hadn't accounted for. They had Spider-Man. "Everyone get to the transport," Peter said quietly. "I'll handle this." "You can't fight an Inquisitor alone," Kira protested. "I'm not going to fight," Peter said. "I'm going to be really, really annoying. It's what I do best." The Inquisitor charged, and Peter moved to meet them. This time, with his spider sense operating at full capacity, it was a different fight entirely. He could feel every strike before it came, predict every force push, anticipate every attack pattern. Peter didn't try to win. He just tried to buy time. He webbed the Inquisitor's feet, slowing them for half a second. He dodged the lightsaber by millimeters, close enough to feel the heat. He grabbed a piece of equipment and hurled it, not to injure, but to obstruct. He wall-crawled to places the Inquisitor had to work to reach, forcing them to waste time and energy. "You're very good at running," the Inquisitor taunted. "Thanks," Peter called back, swinging over their head. "I've had a lot of practice." He heard the transport engines roar to life in the bay behind him. Good. Phoenix Cell was getting away. The Inquisitor must have heard it too, because they abandoned the fight with Peter and turned toward the transport, raising one hand for a force attack that would tear the ship apart. Peter's spider sense screamed a warning not about himself, but about his allies. Without thinking, he fired both web shooters at the Inquisitor's outstretched hand and pulled himself forward in a devastating flying kick. All of his enhanced strength, all of his momentum, focused into a single impact that connected with the Inquisitor's helmet. The Inquisitor flew backward, crashed through a wall, and didn't immediately get up. Peter landed, breathing hard. His web shooters were empty. He'd burned through his entire reserve. His body ached from a dozen impacts, and his spider sense was warning him that the first Inquisitor would be free of the webbing any second. "Spider," Kira's voice from the transport. Get on. Peter ran. Not graceful, not acrobatic, just a full sprint toward the transport as its rear ramp started closing. He pushed his enhanced speed to the limit, legs burning, and leaped. His fingers caught the ramp edge just as it sealed. He dangled for a moment, then Chopper grabbed his arm and hauled him aboard. The transport lifted off, blaster fire pinging off its hull, and shot through the equipment bay's external doors into Lothal's smog-choked sky. Behind them, the detention facility grew smaller, alarms blaring, Imperial fighters scrambling. Peter collapsed on the deck, chest heaving. Did we get him? The engineer? The Mon Calamari knelt beside him, large eyes full of wonder. You saved us all. I am Raddus. I owe you my life. Just doing what anyone would do, Peter gasped. No, Kira said, sitting down beside him. What Spider-Man would do. Through the transport's viewport, Peter could see the stars of this alien galaxy, and for the first time since arriving, he felt something other than panic and confusion. He felt purpose. His spider sense was working again. He'd fought Inquisitors and survived, and he'd just helped rescue someone from the literal space Gestapo. Maybe, Peter thought, he could make a difference here. Maybe Spider-Man belonged in this galaxy, at least for a little while, at least until he found a way home. Raddus was exactly the kind of person the Empire feared most: brilliant, principled, and utterly unwilling to compromise on either quality. Over the next week, as Phoenix Cell relocated to a new safe house in Lothal's abandoned mining district, Peter learned that the Mon Calamari engineer had been working on Imperial weapons projects under duress. His family had been taken hostage, his homeworld occupied, and the Empire had given him a simple choice: design better ways to kill, or watch everyone he loved die. So Raddus had designed weapons, and he'd also carefully built in fatal flaws that wouldn't be discovered until the systems failed catastrophically in the field. Sabotage from within, Raddus explained, his basic accented but clear. The Mon Calamari sat at a makeshift workbench, examining the Imperial equipment Phoenix Cell had salvaged. The Empire believes they can force genius into submission. They do not understand that genius finds ways to resist. Peter, who'd spent the last hour helping Chopper reinforce the safe house's security systems, found himself liking Raddus immediately. So, what were they making you build? If you can talk about it, I mean. Raddus's large eyes reflected sadness and determination in equal measure. A targeting system for their new TIE Defender project. Advanced fighters meant to counter Rebel starfighter superiority. I designed the targeting computer to have a 0.03-second delay in target acquisition. He made a gesture with his webbed hands. Imperceptible in testing, fatal in combat against skilled pilots. That's... Peter paused. That's actually kind of genius and terrifying at the same time. The Empire's cruelty breeds creativity in resistance, Raddus said simply. Kira entered the workshop area, datapad in hand. We've got a problem. Well, several problems, but one big one. The Inquisitors? Peter guessed. Worse. The Empire's put 100,000 credit bounty on Spider-Man, dead or alive, but preferably alive for study. Kira pulled up the holographic bounty notice. Peter's masked face stared back at him from a dozen security camera angles. Every bounty hunter, mercenary, and desperate criminal in 3 sectors is going to be looking for you. Peter whistled. I went from 50,000 to 100,000. I'm moving up in the world. This isn't funny, Kira said, but Peter could see the ghost of a smile. You can't go out in public anymore. Not as Spider-Man. You'll be recognized instantly. So I need a disguise, Peter said. Or better yet, I need to not be on Lothal at all. That got everyone's attention. Chopper stopped his work on the security console. Raddus looked up from his examination of Imperial technology. Even Ren, who'd been cleaning blasters in the corner, paused. You're leaving? Ren asked, and Peter heard the disappointment in the young rebel's voice. Not leaving, Peter clarified. Just thinking strategically. If the Empire's focusing resources on hunting me here, maybe I should take the heat somewhere else. Draw attention away from Phoenix Cell's operations. Kira studied him for a long moment. You want to become a distraction. I want to become a menace, Peter corrected. Hit Imperial targets across multiple systems, make them spread their forces thin trying to catch me. And maybe, while I'm causing chaos, I can figure out how to get home. The multiverse doesn't exactly have a customer service line, Chopper pointed out. No, but it has to have an explanation, some kind of technology or force thing that brought me here. Peter started pacing his thinking mode that Aunt May always said made him look like a caged cat. The Inquisitors keep saying, I'm wrong for this galaxy, that my energy signature is alien. Maybe if I can find someone who understands dimensional mechanics, or whatever the Star Wars equivalent is. The Jedi Archives, Radus said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Before the Empire destroyed them, the Jedi Temple on Coruscant contained the most comprehensive collection of Force knowledge in the galaxy, including studies of dimensional anomalies, tears in space-time, and phenomena that defied conventional understanding. The temple's a ruin now, Kira said. The Emperor turned it into his palace. It's the single most heavily guarded location in the entire galaxy. Right, Peter said. So that's off the table. What's plan B? There are rumors, Radus continued thoughtfully, of a surviving Jedi, someone who escaped Order 66 and has been hiding in the Outer Rim. If anyone could understand your situation, it would be a Jedi Master. Peter's spider sense gave the faintest pulse, not danger, but something else. Possibility? Intuition? He was still learning the distinctions. Rumors aren't exactly actionable intelligence, Chopper said. But they're better than nothing, Peter countered. And if there's even a chance, his spider sense exploded with warning. Peter's hand shot out, grabbing Kira's arm and yanking her backward, just as the window exploded inward in a hail of blaster fire. The bolts tore through the space where she'd been standing, scorching the wall behind her. Contact! Chopper yelled, returning fire through the broken window. Peter's adapted spider sense was painting a tactical picture in his mind with crystal clarity. 6 hostiles on the roof across the street, 4 more moving to flank from ground level, and something big, something dangerous approaching from the south. Bounty hunters, Ren said, checking his weapon. They found us. How? Kira demanded, helping Radus toward the safe room. Peter's enhanced hearing caught a sound from above repulsor engines, but with a distinct whine that was different from Imperial craft. His spider sense screamed a warning, and Peter grabbed Chopper, physically dragging him away from the security console just as a rocket punched through the ceiling and detonated. The explosion blew out half the room. Peter's ears rang, his vision blurred, but his healing factor was already working. He pushed rubble off himself, coughing in the dust and smoke. Through the destruction, a figure descended on a jetpack, armor painted in green and red, helmet with a distinctive T-shaped visor, and enough weapons mounted on their body to fight a small war. Mandalorian. Peter didn't know the word yet, but he recognized a professional when he saw one. This wasn't some Imperial grunt or opportunistic thug. This was a warrior, and they moved with the confidence of someone who'd survived 100 bounties. Spider-Man, the Mandalorian said, voice filtered through the helmet. Female, Peter thought. 100,000 credits. I'll try not to damage you too badly. You know, Peter said, standing up and brushing dust off his suit. I'm really getting tired of people trying to collect on me. The Mandalorian raised their arm, a weapon mounted on their vambrace, and fired. A net made of some kind of energy mesh shot toward Peter. His spider sense screamed, and he flipped sideways, the net missing him by inches. Where it hit the wall, the metal sizzled and melted. Okay, weaponized fishing net, Peter said. That's new. He fired a web line at the Mandalorian's jetpack, but they were already moving, rocketing backward through the hole they'd made in the ceiling. Peter's web caught empty air. Kira, Peter shouted. Get Radus out of here. I'll handle this. There's at least 10 more out there. Kira called back, helping the Mon Calamari through the debris. Then I'll handle 10 more. Peter launched himself through the broken window, swinging into the lothal twilight. His spider sense immediately warned him of blaster fire from multiple directions. The other bounty hunters were spread across the rooftops, turning the industrial district into a kill zone. But Peter had something they didn't: three-dimensional mobility, and a danger sense that now worked perfectly in this galaxy. He wall-crawled up the side of a building, dodged 2 stun bolts without even looking, and came up behind one of the bounty hunters, a Rhodian with green skin and a fancy rifle. Peter webbed the rifle to the rooftop, then webbed the Rhodian's hands to his face. Sorry. Occupational hazard. A thermal detonator arced through the air toward him. Peter's spider sense gave him the trajectory and timing. He caught it mid-flight, wound up like he was pitching for the Yankees, and hurled it back toward its source. The explosion lit up the rooftop, where 3 more bounty hunters had been setting up a heavy blaster. The Mandalorian rocketed past him, firing wrist-mounted blasters. Peter twisted in mid-air, dodging the shots, and fired web lines at the Mandalorian's jetpack exhaust ports. The webbing gummed up the engines, and the Mandalorian started spinning out of control. But instead of crashing, they killed the engines, went into a controlled fall, and fired a grappling line from their vambrace that caught a building edge. They swung down gracefully, landed on their feet, and immediately raised both arms, more weapons charging up. "You're good," Peter called out, landing on a wall 20 feet away. "Like, really good? Who trained you?" "Does it matter?" the Mandalorian asked. "You're worth more credits than I've seen in 5 years. Nothing personal." "It's always personal when someone's shooting at me." The Mandalorian fired what looked like a miniature missile from their gauntlet. Peter's spider sense gave him just enough warning to leap clear before it detonated in a flash of concussive force. He swung wide, came around behind the Mandalorian, and tried to web their arms, but they were fast, rolling under his web line and coming up with a vibroblade that hummed with cutting power. Peter landed, backed away from the blade. His web shooters were still reloading. He'd burned through most of his fluid during the detention center escape and hadn't had time to make more. He had maybe 3 good shots left. "Look," Peter said, "I get it. You're a professional. This is your job. But the people I'm with? They're trying to save lives, to fight an empire that's crushing entire worlds. Is that really worth 100,000 credits?" The Mandalorian paused, just for a second. "The Empire pays. The Rebellion doesn't." "The Rebellion doesn't have money," Peter countered. "But they have something better. They have a cause. They have hope." "Hope doesn't buy Beskar," the Mandalorian said, gesturing to their armor. Before Peter could respond, his spider sense screamed the worst warning yet, not from the Mandalorian, not from the remaining bounty hunters. From above, something massive and dark and hungry in the Force. Peter looked up and saw the Imperial shuttle descending, and standing in its open bay door was the skeletal Inquisitor from the detention center, the one Peter had buried under a web net. They looked furious. "Oh no," Peter said. "Oh no," the Mandalorian agreed, looking up. The Inquisitor dropped from the shuttle, using the Force to slow their fall, and landed between Peter and the Mandalorian with enough impact to crack the rooftop. Their lightsaber ignited with that angry red glow, and their yellow eyes fixed on Peter with murderous intent. "You humiliated me," the Inquisitor said. "I will take you apart piece by piece." "Get in line," the Mandalorian muttered, but they'd unconsciously stepped back. Even hardened bounty hunters knew when they were outclassed. Peter's mind raced. Empty web shooters, exhausted from fighting bounty hunters, and now facing an Inquisitor who had a personal grudge and the full power of the dark side. His spider sense was giving him one clear message: run. But if he ran, the Inquisitor would tear Phoenix Cell apart looking for him. If he fought, he'd probably die, or worse, get captured and dissected in some Imperial lab, which left option 3. "Hey," Peter shouted to the Mandalorian. "You want that bounty? Then help me survive the next 5 minutes, and I'll figure something out." The Mandalorian stared at him through that T-shaped visor. Peter could practically see the mental math happening, weighing credits against survival against whatever code of honor Mandalorians operated under. 5 minutes, the Mandalorian said. Then we renegotiate. They raised their gauntlet and fired a blast of flame at the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor deflected it with the Force, but the momentary distraction gave Peter the opening he needed. He launched himself at the Inquisitor, fist cocked back, and drove a punch that carried 15 tons of force directly into their midsection. The Inquisitor flew backward, crashed through a rooftop access door, and disappeared into the building below. "Run!" Peter yelled. He and the Mandalorian ran in the same direction, for completely different reasons, as the Inquisitor's rage-filled scream echoed through the industrial district and the real fight began. Running through an industrial district with a Mandalorian bounty hunter while being chased by an enraged Inquisitor was not how Peter had expected his evening to go, but at this point he was learning to expect the unexpected. The Mandalorian's jetpack sputtered, still gummed up with Peter's webbing, so they were both on foot, leaping between rooftops as the Inquisitor pursued with relentless fury. Peter's spider sense painted a picture of destruction behind them. The Inquisitor was tearing through buildings, using the Force to hurl debris, and closing the distance with terrifying speed. "Your webbing is ruining my jetpack," the Mandalorian shouted. "Your jetpack is ruining my escape plan." Peter shot back, swinging across a gap between buildings. Behind them, a massive piece of machinery, easily 3 tons, sailed through the air and crashed into the building they'd just left. The structure groaned, began to collapse. "Does that thing ever run out of juice?" the Mandalorian asked, firing their grappling line to swing across the same gap. "I don't think the Force works that way," Peter said. "Also, I still don't know your name." "Shara Cast," the Mandalorian said. "And you're still worth 100,000 credits." "Peter Parker. Nice to meet you. Can we table the bounty thing until we're not being murdered?" An entire section of rooftop exploded behind them as the Inquisitor erupted from below like a demonic jack-in-the-box. The lightsaber carved through metal support beams, and the Inquisitor's yellow eyes locked onto Peter with predatory focus. "There is nowhere you can run," the Inquisitor said, their voice carrying across the distance. "The Force reaches all places. You cannot hide from it." Peter's spider sense suddenly gave him a warning from a different direction, more Imperial forces converging on their position. Stormtrooper transports, probably drawn by the chaos. "We need to lose them," Peter said. "Like, right now." Shara grabbed Peter's arm, surprisingly strong grip even through the armor, and pointed toward the industrial sector's edge. "There. The old monorail system hasn't been operational in 10 years, but the tunnels still exist." "Tunnels are good," Peter agreed. "I like tunnels." They sprinted toward the abandoned monorail station, Peter's enhanced speed letting him keep pace with Shara's augmented armor. Behind them, the Inquisitor was a dark silhouette against Lothal's twin moons, lightsaber held high like a beacon of rage. The monorail entrance was sealed with a rusted gate. Peter grabbed it with both hands and pulled. Enhanced strength tore the gate from its moorings, and they dove into the darkness just as the Inquisitor landed where they'd been standing. The tunnels were pitch black, abandoned, and smelled like 20 years of decay. Peter's enhanced vision adjusted quickly, but Shara activated a light on her helmet that cut through the darkness. "Keep moving," Shara said. "Those things are relentless." They ran deeper into the tunnel system, taking random turns, trying to lose pursuit. Peter's spider sense was still screaming warnings the Inquisitor was following them, but the tunnels were slowing them down. Even the Force couldn't see through solid rock. After what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, they emerged in a sub-level maintenance bay. Water dripped from broken pipes, and the only light came from emergency strips that still had power. Peter collapsed against a wall, breathing hard. His healing factor was working overtime on various bruises and burns from the fight. Shara stood guard at the tunnel entrance, weapons ready. "I think we lost them," Peter said between breaths. "For now," Shara agreed. She turned to face him, and even through the helmet, Peter could feel the scrutiny. "You're not Force sensitive." I've fought enough Force users to recognize the signs, but you moved like you knew where every attack was coming from. It's complicated, Peter said. Uncomplicated, Peter sighed. I have a danger sense, precognition, kind of. It tells me when bad things are about to happen. When I first got here, the Force was screwing with it too much background noise, but I adapted. Now it works better than ever. Adapted, Shara repeated, to the Force. In less than 2 weeks. I'm a quick learner. Shara was quiet for a moment. Then she reached up and removed her helmet. Peter saw a woman in her 30s, sharp features, a scar running through her left eyebrow, and eyes that had seen too much combat. Her hair was pulled back in a practical braid. I'm a Mandalorian, she said. We have a code. We fight with honor, we protect our clan, and we take contracts that don't violate our principles. She sat down across from Peter. 100,000 credits would set me up for years. I could buy better equipment, secure my future, maybe even return to Mandalore. But, Peter prompted, because he could hear the hesitation, but you saved civilians during the detention center escape. I checked the Imperial reports. You could have run immediately, but you stayed to cover the rebels' extraction. You risked capture for people who mean nothing to you. Shara studied him. That's not the behavior of a criminal or a threat. That's the behavior of a warrior. Peter felt something ease in his chest. So you're not going to try to collect the bounty? I didn't say that. Shara's expression remained neutral. I said I'm reconsidering. The Inquisitors' involvement changes the equation. The Empire doesn't send Inquisitors after random anomalies, they send them after threats to Imperial power. She leaned forward. What are you really, Spider-Man? And don't give me the radioactive spider story. What makes you important enough to mobilize this many resources? Peter considered his answer carefully. He'd been holding back information, keeping his origin secret because he didn't know who to trust in this galaxy. But Shara had just helped him escape an Inquisitor when she could have let him die and collected the bounty from his corpse. I'm not from this galaxy, Peter said. I'm from another dimension, another universe entirely. Something pulled me here, some kind of dimensional rift, and I don't know how to get back. Shara's expression didn't change, but Peter saw her hand move closer to her blaster. Prove it. How do I prove I'm from another dimension? Tell me something impossible, something that doesn't fit with anything in this galaxy. Peter thought for a moment. In my universe, there are no Jedi or Sith, no Force, no lightsabers or star destroyers or hyperspace travel. We have one planet Earth with one species that's reached sapience, and we got superpowers from scientific accidents, cosmic radiation, and experimental serums. Not from a mystical energy field. One planet, Shara said slowly. One species. Well, there are aliens. Lots of aliens. They just don't usually visit Earth, and when they do, it's usually to invade and we have to stop them. Peter shrugged. We've got gods from Norse mythology, super soldiers from World War II, billionaires in power armor, and giant green rage monsters. But no Force. Shara stared at him. Then, incredibly, she laughed short and sharp. You're either telling the truth, or you're the most creative liar I've ever met. Truth, Peter said. Scout's honor. What's a scout? Never mind. Shara stood up, putting her helmet back on. The bounty stands, but I'm not turning you into the Empire. I'll hold the contract open until I figure out what to do with you. That's surprisingly fair. Mandalorians are pragmatic, Shara said. You're worth more alive and functional than dead and studied. And if you really are from another dimension, that's information the Empire shouldn't have. She pulled out a small device, a communicator. Your rebel friends are probably worried. Give them a signal so they don't do something stupid. Peter activated his own comm, the one Chopper had given him weeks ago. Phoenix Cell, this is Spider. You guys okay? Static for a moment, then Kira's voice, tight with tension. Spider, where are you? The bounty hunters withdrew after the Inquisitor showed up, but we had to evacuate. Radus is safe, but we lost the safe house. I'm alive. I've got a temporary ally? It's complicated. Where should I meet you? Coordinates incoming. It's an old mining facility outside the city. Imperial scanners won't detect us there. A pause. Peter, the Empire's mobilizing. They're locking down the entire sector. Whatever you did, you've got their full attention now. Peter exchanged glances with Shara. Yeah, I might have punched an Inquisitor through a building. Twice. Of course you did, Kira said. But Peter heard the relief underneath the exasperation. Get here safely. Phoenix, sell out. Shara was already checking her equipment, preparing to move. The mining facility. I know it. We can reach it through the underground transit system if we're careful. You're coming with me? Peter asked, surprised. I want to meet these rebels. I want to understand what's happening. And Shara hesitated. I want to decide if the Mandalorian way includes fighting an empire. They moved through the sub-levels of Lothal's industrial underbelly, avoiding Imperial patrols and the lingering presence of bounty hunters still searching for an easy payday. Peter's spider sense kept them ahead of trouble, warning of patrols before they rounded corners, alerting them to surveillance systems before they triggered alarms. Your danger sense, Shara said as they navigated a maintenance corridor. It's more than just precognition. You're reading the environment, predicting tactical situations. It's getting better, Peter admitted. The more I use it here, the more it adapts to how this galaxy works. That shouldn't be possible. Adaptation takes years, decades. Neural pathways don't just rewire themselves. Maybe they do when you're from another dimension, Peter suggested. Or maybe my spider powers are just weird. Back home, Reed Richards, he's this super genius scientist, spent 3 months trying to figure out how my abilities work. He gave up and called it thematic resonance with arachnid characteristics, which is science talk for I have no idea. They emerged from the underground network into the Badlands outside Lothal's main city. The twin moons cast silver light over rocky terrain, and in the distance, Peter could see the silhouette of the abandoned mining facility. His spider sense pulsed not danger, but presence. Phoenix Cell was there. They'd made it. But his sense also warned him of something else. Something watching from the city behind them. The Inquisitor hadn't given up. They were regrouping, planning, preparing for the next encounter. This isn't over, Peter said quietly. No, Shara agreed. You've made an enemy of the Empire. They don't forget, and they don't forgive. Then I guess I'll just have to be really annoying until they get tired of chasing me. That's your plan? Be annoying? Peter grinned behind his mask. You'd be surprised how effective it is. They approached the mining facility, and Phoenix Cell emerged from cover weapons raised until they recognized Peter. Kira lowered her blaster, looking between Peter and the Mandalorian with obvious suspicion. Spider, Kira said carefully. Who's your friend? This is Shara Cast, Peter said. She's a Mandalorian bounty hunter who was trying to collect on me but decided to help me escape an Inquisitor instead. It's been a weird day. It's been a weird 2 weeks, Kira corrected. She extended a hand to Shara. Kira Voss, Phoenix Cell. If you're here to cause trouble, we'll put you down fast. No trouble, Shara said, accepting the handshake. Mandalorian grip met rebel determination. I'm here to observe, and maybe to understand why this dimension-hopping spider is worth the Empire's full attention. Dimension-hopping spider, Chopper repeated from behind Kira. That's going in the mission report. Radus approached, his large Mon Calamari eyes studying Shara with open curiosity. A Mandalorian. I've only read about your people. Your armor is beautiful functional art. It's Beskar, Shara said, some pride creeping into her voice. Forged by my clan, passed down 3 generations, and now you're considering helping the rebellion? Radus asked gently. Shara looked at Peter, at the assembled rebels, at the determination on their faces despite having lost their safe house and being hunted by the Empire. I'm considering many things, she said finally. Peter's spider sense pulsed again, that warning of distant danger. The Inquisitor was still out there. The Empire was mobilizing, and somewhere in this galaxy, answers to his dimensional displacement existed. But for now, standing in an abandoned mining facility with a ragtag rebel cell and a Mandalorian bounty hunter, Peter felt something he hadn't felt since arriving in this galaxy, like he wasn't alone. "All right," Kira said, gesturing everyone inside. "Let's debrief, plan our next move, and figure out how to keep Spider-Man alive long enough to find a way home." "And if we can't find a way home?" Peter asked. Kira smiled grimly. "Then I guess we teach the Empire why you don't mess with friendly neighborhood Spider-Men." Peter followed them inside, Shara at his side, and for the first time since crash landing on Lothal, he let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference in this galaxy far, far away. The abandoned mining facility became Phoenix Cell's new operations center, and over the next 3 weeks, Peter watched the small rebel group transform from desperate survivors into something resembling an actual resistance. Radus proved invaluable. The Mon Calamari engineer dissected Imperial equipment with surgical precision, identifying weaknesses in their communications systems, vulnerabilities in stormtrooper armor, and most importantly, flaws in the TIE fighter designs that Phoenix Cell could exploit. He worked 18-hour days, his large eyes never seeming to tire, driven by a quiet rage at what the Empire had forced him to build. Shara stayed. She claimed it was to observe and assess. But Peter noticed she started helping with tactical planning, training rebels in combat techniques, and sharing Mandalorian wisdom about guerrilla warfare. She still hadn't officially joined Phoenix Cell, but she stopped talking about the bounty. And Peter became a problem the Empire couldn't solve. He hit supply depots across 3 systems, stealing medical supplies and redistributing them to occupied worlds. He sabotaged Imperial construction sites, webbing stormtroopers to their own machinery and leaving messages. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man was here. He rescued prisoners, disrupted propaganda broadcasts, and generally made himself the most wanted person in the Outer Rim. The bounty climbed to 200,000 credits, then 300,000, then 500,000. "You're more expensive than some planetary ransoms," Kira said, reviewing the latest Imperial bulletin. "Congratulations? I prefer to think of it as a measure of how annoying I am," Peter replied. He was working on his web shooters. Radus had helped him synthesize new web fluid using local materials, and it was actually better than his Earth formula. More tensile strength, faster setting time, and it didn't degrade as quickly in this galaxy's different atmospheric conditions. "The Empire's psychology profile on you is interesting," Chopper said, reading from a stolen Imperial datapad. "They classify you as extremely dangerous but driven by misguided heroic impulses. They think you're insane. I mean, I did swing into an Imperial Walker Bay and web up 20 stormtroopers while singing show tunes," Peter pointed out. "You did what?" Kira asked. "The acoustics were great in there." Shara, cleaning her armor in the corner, made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You're either the bravest person I've met or the stupidest. Why not both?" Peter grinned. But beneath the humor, Peter knew the situation was escalating. His spider sense, now operating at full capacity, was constantly warning him of increased Imperial attention. They weren't just hunting him anymore. They were studying him, analyzing his patterns, building a profile, and the Inquisitors were getting smarter. Radus approached Peter's workstation, holding a strange device that hummed with energy. "I've been analyzing the reports of your encounters with Inquisitors. Your partial immunity to Force influence is fascinating, but it's not complete." "Yeah, they can still throw me around with telekinesis," Peter said, "which really hurts, by the way." "The Force affects matter," Radus explained. "Your body is matter, so it can be manipulated. But your mind seems resistant to Force persuasion. Your danger sense can't be clouded by Force concealment, and Force lightning appears to affect you less severely than normal beings." "Force lightning?" concentrated dark side energy channeled as electrical discharge. Extremely painful, usually fatal. Radus adjusted the device. I believe your extra-dimensional origin makes you partially outside the Force's natural influence. You're here, but not completely of this reality. Peter considered that. So I'm like, dimensionally jet-lagged? That's a terrible analogy, but functionally accurate, Radus said. Which brings me to my point. If we can amplify your resistance, make you even more outside the Force's influence, you might become nearly immune to dark side abilities. That sounds incredibly useful and possibly dangerous, Peter said. Extremely dangerous, Radus agreed cheerfully. The device would need to be calibrated to your specific dimensional frequency, which I can only guess at. If I'm wrong, it could kill you or potentially make you more vulnerable to Force manipulation. So best case scenario, I become super effective against Inquisitors. Worst case, I die horribly. Essentially, yes. Peter looked at the device, then at Radus's earnest expression. Let's table that for now. I'd rather not explode while we're still trying to figure out the whole how do I get home situation. Speaking of which, Kira said, joining them, we received a coded transmission from someone claiming to have information about dimensional anomalies. Peter's spider sense pulsed not danger, but that same feeling of possibility he'd felt before. Who? They didn't identify themselves. Just coordinates and a message. The spider who walks between worlds should seek the one who survived the purge. Kira pulled up a star map. The coordinates lead to Tython. It's an ancient world in the deep core, historically significant to Force users. A Jedi? Peter asked. Maybe. Or a trap? Kira's expression was cautious. The Empire knows you're looking for answers. This could be bait to draw you out. Peter's spider sense wasn't screaming danger, but it was definitely present a warning that this decision mattered. What do you think? I think you've been here almost 2 months, Kira said quietly. I think you have people back home who are worried about you. And I think if there's even a chance this lead is real, you have to follow it. Shara stood, her Beskar armor gleaming in the facility's dim light. If you're going into the deep core, you'll need a ship and a pilot. I can provide both. You don't have to, Peter started. I'm a Mandalorian, Shara interrupted. You fought beside me against an Inquisitor. You've proven yourself a warrior. Where I come from, that creates an obligation. She paused. Besides, I've been thinking about what you said, about hope being worth more than credits. I want to see if you're right. Peter felt warmth in his chest, the same feeling he got when the Avengers had his back, when Ned and MJ believed in him despite everything. Thanks, Shara. Don't thank me yet, she said. The deep core is one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy. Unstable hyperspace lanes, gravitational anomalies, and heavy Imperial presence. We'll be lucky to survive the trip. Well, when you put it that way, Chopper cleared his throat. If Spider-Man's leaving Lothal, we should create a distraction. Make the Empire think he's still operating in this sector while he investigates Tython. I can handle that, Ren said, stepping forward. The young rebel had grown more confident over the past weeks, training with Shara and learning from Peter's tactics. We've got his costume specifications. I can wear a replica, move around the city at night. From a distance, Imperial scanners won't know the difference. That's insanely dangerous, Peter said. Everything we do is insanely dangerous, Ren countered. But you saved my life. Let me return the favor. Peter wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in Ren's eyes, the same determination he'd seen in himself the night Uncle Ben died. When someone decided to be a hero, you couldn't stop them. You could only make sure they were prepared. Okay, Peter said. But you train with Shara for 3 more days first, and you promise me that you run if you encounter an Inquisitor. No heroics. No heroics, Ren agreed, grinning. That's your job. 3 days later, Peter stood in the cargo bay of Shara's ship, a modified Com-class fighter, transport that she'd named Mirshmercia Mandalorian for Brain Cell. in what Shara claimed was a joke about her younger self's decision-making. The ship was beautiful in a brutal, functional way. Mandalorian engineering meant it was fast, heavily armed, and could take punishment that would destroy civilian craft. The interior was sparse but efficient, every system optimized for combat operations. "Nice ride," Peter said, running his hand along a bulkhead. "It was my mentor's," Shara said, running pre-flight checks. "He died fighting the Empire on Mandalore, left it to me in his will. I'm sorry." "Don't be. He died with honor, protecting his clan." Shara activated the engines, and the ship thrummed with power. That's all any Mandalorian can ask for. Phoenix Cell had assembled to see them off. Kira handed Peter a datapad. "Everything we know about Tython is on there. Plus, emergency contact protocols if you need backup. You guys have enough to worry about without adding Rescue Spider-Man from the deep core to the list," Peter said. "Still," Kira said. She surprised Peter by pulling him into a quick hug. "Come back alive, okay? The galaxy's more interesting with you in it." Radus gave Peter a small device, a beacon. "If you encounter technology beyond your understanding, activate this. It will record data that I can analyze when you return." "When I return," Peter repeated. "I like the optimism." Chopper clasped Peter's shoulder. "You've done more for the rebellion in 2 months than some cells accomplish in years. Whatever happens, remember that you mattered." "Not planning on dying," Peter said. "But thanks for the pep talk." Ren was wearing the Spider-Man replica costume, a decent copy, though it lacked the actual web shooters and enhanced durability. "I'll keep them chasing shadows. You find your way home." Peter's spider sense pulsed not danger, but something deeper. A sense that this was a turning point, that leaving Lothal meant stepping into something bigger than small-scale rebel operations. He followed Shara into the ship, and the boarding ramp sealed behind them. "Strap in," Shara said from the pilot's seat. "Hyperspace to the deep core is rough even on good days." Peter secured himself in the co-pilot's seat as Shara lifted off. Through the viewport, he watched Lothal fall away the industrial sprawl, the twin moons, the planet that had been his home for 2 months. Phoenix Cell became small figures waving from the ground, then disappeared entirely as the ship climbed toward orbit. "Coordinates locked," Shara said. "Hyperspace in 30 seconds. Peter's spider sense was quiet now, just the ambient warning of potential danger ahead. But beneath that, he felt something else. Anticipation? Hope? Maybe both. "Ready?" Shara asked. "As I'll ever be." The stars stretched into lines of light, and reality blurred as the ship jumped to hyperspace. The deep core awaited, ancient, mysterious, and possibly holding the answers Peter had been searching for. But his spider sense gave one final pulse before the jump was complete, a warning that carried a simple message. Nothing would be the same after Tython. "Here we go," Peter whispered to himself as the galaxy dissolved into the ethereal blue tunnel of hyperspace. Time to find some answers. Behind them, in the outer rim, Ren donned the Spider-Man mask and prepared to become a legend's shadow. Phoenix Cell moved to their next operation, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, an Inquisitor received new orders from the Grand Inquisitor himself. "Find where the anomaly has gone, and when you do, bring me his corpse." The hunt was far from over. It was only just beginning. Hyperspace through the deep core was like being inside a kaleidoscope having a seizure. Peter gripped his seat as the ship shuddered. Alarms blaring warnings about gravitational shears and mass shadows that could rip them out of hyperspace into the heart of a star. Through the viewport, the familiar blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel was shot through with streaks of violent color, reds and purples where reality bent wrong, black voids where something massive distorted space itself. "This is normal?" Peter shouted over the alarms. "For the deep core?" "Unfortunately, yes." Shara's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, making micro-adjustments that kept them on course. The gravitational forces this close to the galactic center make stable hyperspace lanes almost impossible. Most pilots won't risk it. "Great." Love that for us. The ship bucked violently, throwing Peter against his restraints. His spider sense was going absolutely berserk, every instinct screaming that they were in constant, immediate danger. He forced himself to breathe, to trust Shara's piloting, to remember that his danger sense couldn't distinguish between you're about to die and you're in a dangerous situation you can't control. After what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes, the turbulence smoothed out, the alarms quieted, and through the viewport, Peter saw the swirling colors of hyperspace begin to fade, dropping out in 3, 2, 1. Reality snapped back into focus, and Peter's first thought was, beautiful. Tython hung in space like a blue-green jewel, clouds swirling across continents that looked untouched by industrialization. Unlike Lothal's polluted, strip-mined surface, this world appeared pristine forests, oceans, mountains rising in majestic ranges. 2 moons orbited close, and in the distance, Peter could see the dense star field of the deep core. Millions of suns packed so tightly they created a wall of light. Sensors show no Imperial presence, Shara said, running scans. That's unusual. The Empire monitors most historically significant worlds. Maybe it's too remote, Peter suggested. Even for them, or maybe they don't know what's here. Shara brought up a planetary scan. I'm detecting 1 settlement small, maybe a dozen structures, deep in a mountain range on the northern continent. That's where the coordinates point. Peter's spider sense was humming now, not the screaming danger of the hyperspace jump, but a constant low-level warning. Something on that planet was powerful, old, and watching. Let's go say hello, Peter said. Shara piloted the ship into Tython's atmosphere. The entry was smooth, and as they descended through the clouds, Peter got his first close look at the planet. The forests were massive trees that looked thousands of years old, their canopies forming an unbroken sea of green. Rivers carved silver paths through valleys, and everywhere, Peter felt it. The Force. It wasn't like Lothal's industrial presence or Coruscant's chaos. Here, the Force felt pure, undiluted by civilization, flowing through everything with natural rhythm. His spider sense was trying to warn him about it, but the warning felt different. Less danger and more respect this. There, Shara said, pointing. The settlement, carved into a mountainside, was what looked like an ancient temple complex. Stone architecture that predated the Republic, weathered by millennia but still standing. And among the ruins, Peter saw newer structures, simple buildings, probably temporary shelters. Someone lived here. Shara set the ship down in a clearing near the temple. The landing struts extended, touched ancient stone, and the engines powered down into silence. For a moment, neither of them moved. My sensors aren't detecting weapons, Shara said, but that doesn't mean much. If there's a Jedi here, then we're already detected. Peter finished. He unstrapped from his seat. Let's not keep them waiting. They exited the ship into Tython's afternoon sun. The air was clean, the cleanest Peter had breathed since arriving in this galaxy. It smelled like forest and stone and something else, something indefinable that made his spider sense pulse with recognition. This place is alive with the Force, Peter realized. Every rock, every tree, every breath of wind. A figure emerged from the temple entrance, human, male, probably in his 50s but moving with the grace of someone much younger. He wore simple brown robes, and a lightsaber hung from his belt, not ignited, just present. His hair was graying, his face lined with the kind of scars that came from surviving impossible situations, and his eyes held the weight of 19 years of loss. "Peter Parker," the man said, his voice calm but carrying easily across the distance. "The spider who walks between worlds. I've been expecting you." Peter's spider sense pulsed not danger, but importance. This moment mattered. "You sent the message?" "I did." The man approached slowly, hands visible and non-threatening. "My name is Kanan Jarrus. I'm one of the last survivors of Order 66. And you, young spider." are the most interesting thing to happen to this galaxy in 2 decades. Shara's hand moved toward her blaster. How do you know who we are? The Force reveals many things to those who listen, Kanan said. He stopped 10 feet away, giving them space. I felt your arrival the moment your ship entered the system, and I've been tracking reports of Spider-Man for weeks now. The Empire is quite frustrated with you. That's kind of my whole thing, Peter said. Being frustrating. Kanan smiled, brief but genuine. A worthy calling. His expression grew serious. But you're not here to frustrate the Empire today. You're here because you want to go home. Because you're trapped in a galaxy that isn't yours, and you need answers. Can you help me? Peter asked, and he hated how desperate he sounded. I don't know, Kanan said honestly. But I might be able to help you understand what brought you here, and understanding is the first step toward finding a solution. He gestured toward the temple. Will you come inside? There's something you need to see. Peter exchanged glances with Shara. His spider sense wasn't warning him of danger, just that overwhelming sense of importance. Whatever was in that temple, it mattered. Okay, Peter said. But if this is a trap, if I wanted to harm you, I wouldn't have invited you to one of the galaxy's most Force-saturated worlds, Kanan pointed out. This entire planet amplifies Force abilities. If I were your enemy, you'd already be in serious trouble. That's weirdly reassuring and terrifying at the same time, Peter said. They followed Kanan into the temple. The interior was massive vaulted ceilings carved with symbols Peter didn't recognize. Walls covered in faded murals depicting what looked like ancient battles between Force users, and everywhere, that sense of overwhelming presence. This was one of the first Jedi temples, Kanan explained as they walked. Built 10,000 years before the Galactic Republic, when the Jedi were still learning what the Force was, how it worked, what it could do. He led them deeper into the structure. The ancient Jedi were more experimental than their modern descendants. They studied phenomena that later generations considered too dangerous or too heretical, like dimensional rifts. Peter guessed. Exactly like dimensional rifts. They entered a chamber at the temple's heart. The room was circular, with a raised platform in the center. Carved into the platform was a symbol, a spiral with lines radiating outward, like a web or a map of dimensional pathways. And hovering above the platform, held in place by some kind of Force technique, was a holocron. Peter had seen holocrons in Kira's briefing materials, cubic devices that stored Jedi knowledge. But this one was different. Instead of glowing blue or green like normal holocrons, this one flickered between multiple colors: blue, red, purple, green, like it couldn't decide what it was supposed to be. That's... Peter's spider sense was going crazy now, not with danger, but with resonance. The holocron felt familiar somehow, like looking at his reflection in an alien mirror. An interdimensional holocron, Kanan said, created by a Jedi named Quran 3,000 years ago. He was obsessed with the nature of reality, with the boundaries between dimensions, with the question of whether the Force existed in other universes. Kanan approached the holocron reverently. The Jedi Council of his era considered his work heresy. They locked this holocron away, forbade anyone from studying it. But before Order 66, I found references to it in the archives. And after the Purge, when I was searching for any knowledge that might help rebuild the Jedi Order, I came here and found it. What does it say? Peter asked, moving closer. His spider sense was practically singing now, harmonizing with whatever energy the holocron contained. It says that the Force is not universal, Kanan said quietly, that other realities exist with different fundamental laws, different energies, different possibilities. He looked at Peter, and it says that sometimes, very rarely, those realities touch, usually by accident. And when they do, things that shouldn't be possible become possible. Like me ending up here, Peter said. Like you ending up here, Kanan confirmed. The question is, why? Dimensional rifts don't just happen. Something caused it. Something powerful enough to tear a hole between universes. Peter thought back to that moment in New York, the anomaly Dr. Strange had warned about. The colors that had no names. The feeling of being yanked through reality itself. There was something happening in my dimension. Some kind of multiversal event. Dr. Strange, he's a sorcerer, manipulates mystical energy, he said. Reality was collapsing. And you were pulled through the collapse, Kanan said, nodding. That explains the how, but not the where. Why this galaxy? Why this specific point in space and time? Peter's spider sense pulsed, and suddenly he understood. The Force. My spider sense, my danger warning, it's connected to something. Some kind of cosmic awareness, probability, manipulation, precognitive ability. When reality tore, it was drawn to something similar. The Force is everywhere in this galaxy, connecting everything. My spider sense found it, locked onto it, and pulled me here. Like calling to like, Kanan said. Yes, that makes sense. But if I got pulled here by accident, Peter said, his mind racing, then there should be a way to reverse it. To find another rift, another connection point, and use it to get home. Kanan's expression grew troubled. In theory, yes. But dimensional rifts are catastrophically unstable. Creating one intentionally would require power beyond anything the Jedi or Sith ever wielded. And even if you succeeded, the rift might close before you could pass through. Or it might tear you apart. Or it might dump you in an entirely different dimension. So, I'm stuck here, Peter said flatly. I didn't say that. Kanan activated the holocron with a gesture. The cube opened, and a holographic figure appeared, an ancient Jedi with markings on his face and eyes that gleamed with manic intelligence. Gatekeeper Quaran, Kanan said formally. We require your knowledge. The holographic Jedi studied Peter with unnerving intensity. Ah, a dimensional traveler. How marvelous. I theorized your existence, but never expected to encounter one. The gatekeeper's voice had an odd, echoing quality. You wish to return to your origin dimension? Yes, Peter said. Is it possible? Possible? Certainly. Probable? That depends on several factors. The gatekeeper began pacing, or the hologram of pacing. You would need a focal point, something from your home dimension that you brought with you, something that retains a connection to your origin reality. Peter thought immediately of his web shooters. He'd built them on Earth, with Earth materials, using Earth science. They were the most him thing he owned. I've got something, Peter said. Good. Second, you would need a location with thin dimensional barriers, a place where realities naturally press close together. Such locations are rare, but identifiable by specific Force signatures. How rare? Shara asked. In this galaxy, perhaps a dozen such locations exist. Most are known only through ancient texts and rumor. Third, the gatekeeper continued, you would need a massive amount of energy to actually pierce the dimensional barrier. Force energy, ideally, focused through the focal point and directed at the thin barrier. We're talking about power levels that would normally require dozens of Jedi working in concert. Peter felt his hope deflating. I don't have dozens of Jedi. I don't have any Jedi. Just me. The gatekeeper studied him again. You possess your own form of dimensional energy. Different from the Force, but complementary. It's what allowed you to survive the initial transit. If you could amplify that energy, focus it correctly. The hologram flickered. It would be extremely dangerous. The attempt might kill you, but it is theoretically possible for you to open a rift using your own power. How do I amplify my power? Peter asked. That, the gatekeeper said. I do not know. Your energy is alien to this reality. I can only tell you that the potential exists within you. The holocron closed, and the gatekeeper disappeared. Peter stood in silence, processing everything. He had a path forward, impossible and dangerous, but real. There's one location I know of, Kanan said quietly, where the dimensional barriers are thin. It's called Mortis. It exists outside normal space, in a realm between dimensions. The ancient Jedi knew of it, but few ever found it. And those who did? He hesitated. The stories say it changes people, that the Force there is so powerful, it can rewrite your very nature. Sounds cheerful, Peter said. It's also nearly impossible to reach intentionally, Kanan added. Mortis appears only to those it chooses. You can't navigate to it by conventional means, so I need to somehow get Mortis to choose me? Peter asked. How do I do that? I don't know, Kanan admitted. But I know someone who might. Someone who spent years studying the boundaries of the Force, pushing against limitations, trying to understand what lies beyond the known. Who? Shara asked. Someone dangerous, Kanan said. Someone the Empire would very much like dead. Someone I haven't seen in 15 years. He looked at Peter. My former Padawan, Ezra Bridger. Peter's spider sense pulsed at the name recognition without understanding. This Ezra Bridger was important, critical even. Where is he? Peter asked. Last I heard, he was operating in the unknown regions, exploring the edges of known space, searching for something even I don't fully understand. Kanan pulled out a data chip. These are his last known coordinates. It will take weeks to reach him, possibly months, and there's no guarantee he'll have the answers you need. Peter took the data chip, and his spider sense screamed, not danger, but destiny. This was the path. This was where his journey led. Then I guess I'm going to the unknown regions, Peter said. Before anyone could respond, Peter's spider sense exploded with genuine danger, the familiar predatory texture he'd learned to associate with Inquisitors. But this was different. Stronger, more concentrated. They found us, Peter said, turning toward the temple entrance. Kanan's expression hardened. I felt it too. 3 of them, including, he drew his lightsaber, the blade igniting with a blue glow. The Grand Inquisitor himself. Through the temple entrance, Peter could see an Imperial shuttle descending, and standing at its open bay door, crimson lightsabers ignited, were 3 figures in dark armor. 2 he recognized from previous encounters, the skeletal one and the armored one. The 3rd was different. Taller, more imposing, with grey skin and Pau'an features that looked carved from stone. They carried themselves with absolute authority, and even from this distance, Peter could feel the power radiating from them. The Grand Inquisitor had come personally. We need to go, Shara said, her hand on her blaster. Now, they'll shoot down your ship the moment you lift off, Kanan said. And they've already sealed the perimeter. This was always going to end in a fight. Peter looked at Kanan, at Shara, at the temple that held ancient knowledge, and made a decision. Then let's make it a fight they remember. His spider sense was screaming warnings. But beneath that, Peter felt something else, the same determination that had driven him since Uncle Ben's death. The same refusal to back down that had made him Spider-Man in the first place. I've fought Inquisitors before, Peter said, but never 3 at once. Any advice? Kanan ignited his lightsaber with a practiced flourish. Don't die, and try to keep up. The Grand Inquisitor's voice echoed across the temple grounds, amplified by the Force. Peter Parker, you have defied the Empire long enough. Surrender, and your death will be swift. Resist, and you will beg for death before we're finished. Peter stepped into the temple entrance, fully visible, and cupped his hands around his mouth. Yeah, I'm gonna go with option 3. You guys leave, and I don't make you look stupid in front of your boss. The Grand Inquisitor's crimson blade spun once, a gesture of pure contempt. Kill them all. The 3 Inquisitors advanced, and Peter felt his spider sense harmonize perfectly with the Force-saturated air of Tython. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, his power felt complete. All right, Peter said, cracking his knuckles. Let's do this. The final battle had begun. The 3 Inquisitors moved like death itself, coordinated, efficient, and absolutely merciless. The Grand Inquisitor led the assault, his double-bladed lightsaber spinning in a deadly arc that carved through stone pillars as easily as air. The skeletal Inquisitor flanked left, using the Force to hurl chunks of debris like missiles. The armored Inquisitor took the right, their movements methodical and brutal. Peter's spider sense painted the battlefield in his mind with perfect clarity. Every attack, every trajectory, every danger. On Tython, with the force flowing through everything like a river, his precognition had reached new heights. He could feel the Inquisitors' intentions before they even formed them fully. He launched himself straight up the temple wall as the Grand Inquisitor's blade cut through the space he'd occupied. Shara opened fire with her blasters, precise shots that the Inquisitors deflected with contemptuous ease. Kanan moved like water, his blue lightsaber meeting the armored Inquisitor's red blade in a shower of sparks. "Your Jedi tricks won't save you, Jarrus," the armored Inquisitor snarled. "You should have died with the rest of your order." "Still here, still fighting," Kanan replied, his blade work defensive but skilled. "Must be really annoying for you." Peter swung down from the ceiling, both feet connecting with the skeletal Inquisitor's chest with enough force to send them crashing through a wall. His spider sense screamed a warning. The Grand Inquisitor was already there, blade sweeping horizontally. Peter twisted mid-air, the lightsaber missing by millimeters, and fired webs at the Inquisitor's face. The Grand Inquisitor didn't even blink. They used the force to deflect the webbing, and their next strike was faster than Peter had seen any Inquisitor move before. Only his spider sense's perfect warning saved him. He wall-crawled sideways at full speed, the blade carving a molten line through ancient stone. "You are impressive. Anomaly," the Grand Inquisitor said, their voice cold and analytical. "But you cannot win. The dark side is infinite. Your power is borrowed and limited." "My power comes from a radioactive spider and bad life choices," Peter shot back. "And it's gotten me this far." He fired web lines at the ceiling, creating a web net barrier between himself and the Inquisitors. The skeletal Inquisitor recovered from being thrown through a wall, simply cut through it with their lightsaber. But those 3 seconds gave Kanan the opening he needed. The Jedi moved with sudden aggression, driving the armored Inquisitor back with a flurry of strikes that spoke to years of training and survival. "Peter, the holocron, take it and run." "I'm not leaving you," Peter shouted back. "You have to." Kanan deflected a strike, riposted, and used the force to shove his opponent backward. "That knowledge is more important than any of us. If you die here, there's no way home, no hope." Peter's spider sense pulsed with the truth of it. Kanan was right. But every instinct Peter had, every lesson Uncle Ben had taught him screamed against abandoning people in danger. Shara made the decision for him. She threw a thermal detonator directly at the Grand Inquisitor. The Pau'an used the force to catch it mid-flight, but the distraction gave Shara enough time to grab Peter's arm. "Kanan's right," she yelled over the sound of lightsabers and weapons fire. "We go now, or we all die. And your death means everyone you could have saved back home stays unsaved." Peter hated it, hated every fiber of it. But she was right. He ran back into the temple's heart, grabbed the flickering holocron from its pedestal. It felt warm in his hands, almost alive, and sprinted toward the exit. His spider sense was going absolutely berserk now, warning him of dangers from every direction. The skeletal Inquisitor appeared in his path, lightsaber raised. "You're not leaving this temple alive." Peter didn't slow down. At the last second, his spider sense showed him the opening a fraction of a second where the Inquisitor's guard would drop for their strike. Peter slid under the blade like he was stealing home base, came up on the other side, and fired webs at the Inquisitor's feet, pinning them to the floor. "Sorry, gotta go." He burst out of the temple into Tython's fading daylight. Shara was already at her ship, firing up the engines. Behind them, Peter heard the sounds of Kanan's lightsaber meeting multiple opponents. The Jedi was fighting 3 Inquisitors alone, buying them time. "Kanan!" Peter yelled. "Go!" The Jedi's voice carried across the temple grounds. "May the Force be with you, Peter Parker. Find your way home." Peter's spider sense screamed as the skeletal Inquisitor burst from the temple, free from the webbing and radiating dark side fury. But they didn't pursue Peter. They turned back toward Kanan, adding their power to the assault. 3 against 1. Impossible odds. Shara grabbed Peter. physically dragging him toward the ship. "We can't help him. He knows that. Honor his sacrifice by surviving." Peter ran, every step feeling like betrayal, and dove into the ship just as Shara fired the engines to full power. The ship lifted off, and through the viewport, Peter saw Kanan surrounded by 3 Inquisitors, his blue blade moving in defensive patterns that were beautiful and desperate. Then Shara punched the throttle, and the temple disappeared behind them as they rocketed toward orbit. "No, no, no," Peter said, his hands pressed against the viewport. "We have to go back. We go back, we die," Shara said firmly. Her voice was strained. This decision hurt her too. "He chose to give us time. Wasting that sacrifice helps no one." Peter's spider sense suddenly pulsed not from behind them, but ahead. Imperial Star Destroyers were exiting hyperspace around Tython, their massive triangular shapes blocking escape routes. "They were waiting for us," Shara said, her hands flying across the controls. "This was a trap within a trap. They knew we'd run. They knew Kanan would delay us." "Can we make the jump to hyperspace?" Peter asked. "Not through that blockade. They've got gravity wells active. They're preventing hyperspace in this entire sector." Shara yanked the ship into a hard turn as green turbolaser fire lit up the space around them. "We need to get beyond the interdiction field." The ship shuddered as a glancing blow from a turbolaser scorched the shields. Alarms blared. TIE fighters were launching from the Star Destroyers, dozens of them, swarming like angry wasps. Peter's spider sense was painting targeting solutions, showing him where the fighters would be before they got there. Shara, hard left in 3 seconds. She didn't question, just yanked the controls. The ship dove left just as a squadron of TIE fighters swept through the space they'd occupied, their green laser fire missing by meters. "How did you?" Shara started. "Spider sense. I can feel where they're going to shoot. Follow my directions." They fell into a rhythm, Peter calling out maneuvers based on his precognitive sense, Shara executing them with Mandalorian precision. The ship twisted and dove through a lethal ballet of laser fire, using Tython's moons for cover, pushing the engines to their absolute limits. "Interdiction field, edge in 90 seconds, Shara called out. "If we can just..." Peter's spider sense exploded with warning something massive incoming. Through the viewport, he saw one of the Star Destroyers rotating to bring its main batteries to bear, the kind of weapons that could atomize asteroids. "That's bad," Peter said. "That's very bad," Shara agreed. The main batteries fired, massive green bolts of energy that made the TIE fighter weapons look like flashlights. Peter's spider sense screamed the trajectory. "Up. Now." Shara pulled up with everything the ship had. The energy bolts passed beneath them so close that the heat seared the underside armor, but they'd cleared it. 30 seconds to hyperspace range, Shara said. Come on. More TIE fighters, cutting off their escape vector. Peter could feel them in his mind, could sense their attack patterns before the pilots even executed them. "I'm going to do something stupid," Peter said, unbuckling from his seat. "This is not the time for..." Peter was already moving to the cargo bay, where they stored equipment. He found what he needed: Shara's external maintenance cable, heavy duty, rated for towing. "What are you doing?" Shara yelled from the cockpit. Peter attached the cable to his belt, opened the cargo bay door. Alarm screamed about hull breach and leaped out into space. The vacuum was instant and brutal, but Peter's enhanced physiology bought him maybe 90 seconds before he'd pass out. He fired web lines at the pursuing TIE fighters. Webbing didn't work great in vacuum, but at close range, it was enough. He gummed up viewports, tangled control surfaces, created chaos in their formation. 3 TIE fighters collided trying to avoid him. 2 more spun out of control with blinded pilots. Peter's spider sense kept him ahead of the laser fire, twisting through space at the end of Shara's towing cable like the world's most dangerous yo-yo. "Peter," Shara's voice in his comm. "Get back in here." Peter yanked on the cable, and Shara reeled him in. He tumbled back into the cargo bay, and she sealed the door. The ship's atmosphere rushed back in, and Peter gasped for air. "Hyperspace in 5 seconds," Shara called. Peter stumbled back to the co-pilot seat just as the stars stretched into lines and reality bent around them. They were away. Safe. For now. Shara collapsed in her seat, breathing hard. "That was the single most insane thing I've ever seen. And I'm Mandalorian. We live for insane combat tactics." Peter couldn't speak yet, just held up the holocron. They'd gotten it. They'd escaped. But Kanan, he might have survived, Shara said quietly, reading Peter's expression. "Jedi are survivors. It's what they do." 3 Inquisitors, Peter said. Alone. 3 Inquisitors who he knew were coming, who he prepared for. Shara pulled up a star chart. "We honor him by completing the mission, by using what he gave us." Peter looked at the holocron, at the data chip with Ezra Bridger's coordinates, at the path forward that had been bought with Kanan Jarrus's sacrifice. His hands were shaking, adrenaline, fear, grief, all mixing together. "Unknown regions," Shara said, programming coordinates. "It'll take us 2 weeks to get there, maybe 3. Then let's not waste time," Peter said. The ship jumped again, leaving the deep core behind, carrying them toward the galaxy's edge and whatever answers Ezra Bridger might hold. Peter clutched the holocron, and for the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he felt close to home. Not physically, he was farther from Earth than ever, but close to answers, close to hope. And in this galaxy, hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. 3 months after a dimensional rift tore Peter Parker from his reality and deposited him in a galaxy far, far away, Spider-Man had become something the Empire couldn't categorize: a legend that refused to follow their rules, a hero who operated outside the Force's ancient boundaries, and a symbol of resistance that no amount of Imperial propaganda could suppress. The holocron's knowledge revealed the path forward: Ezra Bridger in the unknown regions, who might understand how to reach Mortis. Mortis itself, where dimensional barriers grew thin enough to pierce, and the terrible gamble that Peter might be able to open a rift using his own power, amplified by the Force-saturated realm between dimensions. It was a long shot. It was dangerous. It might kill him, but it was hope. In the weeks that followed, as Shara's ship carried them toward the unknown regions, Peter learned that Kanan Jarrus had survived the encounter with the Inquisitors. Barely. The Jedi had disappeared into the Outer Rim, continuing his lonely fight against the Empire. Phoenix Cell sent word. Ren's impersonation had worked. The Empire still thought Spider-Man was operating on Lothal, spreading their forces thin, buying the rebellion precious time. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people whispered about the masked hero who could walk on walls, who fought with impossible agility, who stood against the Empire with nothing but webs and witty banter. Spider-Man had become more than a person. He'd become an idea. Peter Parker looked at the stars streaming past in hyperspace and thought about home, about Aunt May, who must be terrified, about Ned and MJ, who'd probably never stopped looking for him, about New York, where being a hero meant stopping muggers and helping old ladies cross the street. This galaxy needed heroes too, desperately, and while Peter would never stop trying to find his way home, he knew that wherever he was, whatever galaxy he found himself in, the responsibility remained the same. With great power came great responsibility, even when that power carried you between dimensions, even when responsibility meant fighting an empire, even when home seemed impossibly far away. The ship jumped to hyperspace again, carrying Spider-Man toward the unknown regions, toward answers, toward the impossible hope of home. Behind him, the Empire mobilized. The Grand Inquisitor swore vengeance. Bounty hunters increased their efforts, but Peter Parker Spider-Man, the dimension-hopping spider, the friendly neighborhood hero lost between worlds, smiled behind his mask. Because if there was one thing Spider-Man was good at, it was beating impossible odds. And this galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the smallest spider could shake the greatest web.